We taking over them sports, dog. We got white people shaking in their boots. Just seen little Serena Williams win the U.S. Open, boy. You see?
Tennis has always carried a reputation: elegance, grace, class, and pure skills. Legends like Roger Federer, Steffi Graf have long been the torchbearers of that image. But the 2025 U.S. Open, it feels like a sport rebranded overnight. There's aggression, ugly meltdowns, verbal spats, and tempers running wild. First, of course, came Daniil Medvedev's explosive first-round meltdown, and now the U.S. Open is at the center of a racism storm. The latest controversy erupting in what could have been an otherwise inconsequential matchup between Taylor Townsend and Jelena Ostapenko. Unseeded America's Townsend defeated her 25th seeded opponent in straight sets. But what should have been a routine proceeding post the match turned into one of the ugliest flashpoints of the Grand Slam, making us ask, did Ostapenko cross the line here? Now, usually after a face-off, the two players meet at the net, shake hands, one congratulates, the other commiserates, and that's over. Ostapenko didn't do any of that. She humiliated Townsend right at the nets. The American gave it back too. Fans booed Ostapenko, and now she's staring at accusations of racism. Townsend pulled off a massive upset, 7-5, 6-1, a solid win there. But when the players met to shake hands, Ostapenko dropped a verbal bomb.
She told me I have no education, no class, and to see what happens if we play each other outside of the US. I said I'm excited, bring it on.
No education, no class. That was Ostapenko's parting shot. Townsend didn't mince her words in response. She told Ostapenko to take the loss. The home crowd roared with her. Ostapenko walked out to a chorus of boos. But the controversy didn't die just there. It only escalated. Ostapenko's comments triggered a storm on social media. Accusations of racism started piling in. The backlash was so intense, the Latvian was forced to issue a clarification, not an apology, a clarification. She claimed tension started after a net cord point went Townsend's way, and since Townsend didn't apologize for that net cord, she felt disrespected. Now let's get one thing clear here. Apologizing for a net cord is a gesture. It's not a rule. It's tradition, a courtesy you choose to grant your opponent for a lucky shot. But skipping it, that doesn't make a player classless or uneducated.
Whether it had racial undertones or not, that's something she can speak on. But also that has been a stigma in our community of being not educated and all of the things, when it's the furthest thing from the truth.
That's where it hits home, because words carry baggage, and when you're a Grand Slam winner, you can't hide behind excuses. If Ostapenko felt disrespected, she had every right to be upset. But insulting an opponent and taking pot shots like that, that's not passion, that's privilege. The result, she didn't just offend Townsend, she disrespected her rival, fans, and the sport itself. Ostapenko hasn't apologized yet, because according to her, she's done nothing wrong. She's said nothing objectionable. But here's the hypocrisy. She's offended by a missed courtesy at the net, yet feels entitled to call another player classless and uneducated. Jelena Ostapenko may deny racism. She may insist she didn't mean it at all, but damage is done and it's irrevocable. And when you insult your opponent's dignity, you don't just lose the match, you lose much more.
North Carolina.
2 new historic landmarks designated in Charlotte. Here's where. Charlotte officially has 2 more landmarks. City Council members voted unanimously Monday to designate the Dr. Charles W. and Vivian L. Williams House in North Charlotte and Ziegler Bowers House in West Charlotte as historic landmarks. The Dr. Charles W. and Vivian L. Williams House, built in 1963 in the Hyde Park Estate neighborhood, is described by the city as a well-preserved example of a large split-level ranch home with brick veneer, expansive windows, deep eaves and contemporary details. The home is significant not just for its architecture but also as the former home of Dr. Charles Warren Williams, the city notes. Williams helped integrate the North Carolina Medical Society and Charlotte Memorial Hospital. He and his wife, teacher Vivian Louis Williams, were instrumental in the design and development of Hyde Park Estates, a suburban upper-middle-class neighborhood for black professionals on the Beatties Ford Road corridor. Located at 5906 Crestwood Drive, the landmark designation report for the property puts its value at $435,100. The Ziegler-Bowers house at 421 Heathcliff Street is one of only 2 surviving Craftsman Colonial Revival residences in the Wesley Heights neighborhood, the city says. The home, built in 1923 for Frank Ziegler and Jenny Lee Davis Ziegler, is also significant for its associative history of Charlotte's mid-20th century urban demographic transition. They purchased lots in Wesley Heights, one of the last inner-ring suburban developments in Charlotte, which attracted white-collar professionals like engineer Frank Ziegler, the landmark designation report says. They sold the house in 1937, and it was purchased by Paul Chadwick Bowers and Juanita Lucille Hicks Bowers. Redlining in the late 1930s led to a shift to white working-class residents, like the Bowerses. Urban renewal and blockbusting practices in Wesley Heights accelerated the demographic transition from overwhelmingly white to majority black in the 1970s. The property is currently valued at $625,200. This story was originally published August 26, 2025 at 5:45 a.m.
I first heard about Hurricane Katrina, I want to say, because it was on the 29th, maybe the 26th, kind of like word that it was out there and, you know, what it was building to, the strength that it was building to.
This week marks 20 years since Hurricane Katrina forged a path of destruction along the Gulf Coast.
The storm's sustained winds reached 175 miles per hour, making it a Category 5 hurricane.
The famous lower Ninth Ward of New Orleans, that's where there was a big breach in the levee.
I don't think the storm was discriminating in any way.
That last voice was then Army Lieutenant General Russell Honore. He became well known in 2005 when he led the military response to Hurricane Katrina and has become a go-to crisis leader for the last 20 years. Our co-host Michelle Martin spoke with the now retired General Honore from his home in Baton Rouge.
You got there 2 days after the storm made landfall in Louisiana. That was actually the second landfall. What stands out to you just when you first arrived in New Orleans?
Well, was the flying in on the helicopter on Wednesday morning and then landed next to the Superdome. That was a sight to behold. Imagine 15,000 or so people standing outside the Superdome, then getting off that helicopter and making eye contact with people, and that look of desperation in their eyes to get out of there. And it broke my heart when I saw a lady with a toddler in a shopping basket pushing the baby in the water. The water was up to the baby's chest, and she was trying to get into the Superdome to save her baby and herself. And I said, we got to get these people out of here. I walked in and saw the mayor, and he said, my priority is evacuation.
Had you ever seen anything like this?
Nothing of this magnitude. Over 240,000 homes flooded in and around New Orleans.
How did you decide what to do first?
I listened to the priority of the mayor, and I left the mayor and went to see the governor, Blanco. Her priority was evacuation, provide food and water for people. This obviously was a logistics issue. The talking point on most of the major media was covering alleged looting. It led the governor to a point to say, hey, the priority is to prevent the looting, where in essence people went into the survival mode. But somehow it got portrayed in the national media as looting.
But isn't it also true that there were law enforcement agencies in the area who were also treating people like they were looting?
Yeah, that was the assumption. In my observation, that this pre-notion that the poor is going to loot, it's a sad commentary, but it's built into our culture. And in some cases, adjacent parishes and municipalities block people from coming in because they said, well, these people are going to come loot our stuff. You know, 80% of the area did evacuate. And there was this big fear that the people were left behind were going to go loot people's stuff, whereas in essence, what they were doing was going in to try to get food and water.
The memory that a lot of people have is that there were too many people in leadership positions that were seen as incompetent. In hindsight, is that fair?
We have to take into account when you have a major disaster, first of all your first responders are survivors. the storm overmatched the infrastructure, and it overmatched the ability for them to deal with it. Because in a real crisis, the local leaders lose control because it's beyond their ability to immediately respond to. That's why we got these levels of government and federal organizations that need to be prepared to go in and help people.
Is there something that you think emergency response leaders have learned from Katrina or should have learned?
Yeah, that you can't skip the preparedness phase. In the preparedness phase, if you're going to put people in a shelter, they have pre-positioned food and water. But what changed their entire quick response to create those shelters was the fact when the levees broke, people couldn't leave, and they were run out of their homes, and they were on the top of the interstates, and some of them were still on their roofs days later. And the people on the ground, there were people working their you-know-what off, trying to save lives.
Look, I know in the past when we've talked, you've emphasized that people also need to take care of themselves. They need to have a plan. They need to be able to get a hold of their important documents, for example. Do you think that people have taken that in?
Let me tell you, Michelle, we spend more time here getting ready for football season than we do hurricane season. Now, obviously, that 80% that evacuated, they may have not started off with a plan, but the alert system, I can't overemphasize, that came from the National Weather Service was significant in getting people to evacuate. And the 80% that evacuate, I would tell you could evacuate. That 20% that didn't evacuate, most of those were poor people. That many of them didn't have cars, and the majority of them didn't have the means, Michelle. Or in the case of those that we took out of their homes, they didn't have the information or the means. And remember, most of them were elderly, disabled, and poor, and most of them were by themselves. And when you're elderly, you don't want to leave your home.
Yeah.
They want to stay because they know where their medicine is. Many of them lived alone, as I said, and they got left out of the information system. And in some cases, the system failed them. The city did send people to pick them up, but at that time, you couldn't take an animal in an ambulance. And the elderly people said, well, I'm not leaving if I can't take my dog with me. We changed the law after that, a federal law that says if you're doing an evacuation, you have to have a shelter in place for the animals.
Wow.
And that has been fixed.
If there's a lasting legacy of Katrina, what do you think the lasting legacy is?
It's a reminder that on any given day, Mother Nature can break anything built by man. And when we get proper warning, we need to evacuate. And we need to be prepared to evacuate.
That is retired Lieutenant General Russell Honore. He coordinated the country's military response to Hurricane Katrina as commander of Joint Task Force Katrina. General, thank you so much for talking with us once again.
Thank you, Michelle. Be prepared to evacuate. I know you live in D.C. Be prepared to evacuate because you can flood up there too.
Okay.
Get your checklist together. Get ready.
In 1965, during Hurricane Betsy, there was an intentional dynamite of the levees, and that caused the lower Ninth Ward to flood. People were on their roofs. Several people lost their lives. They dynamited the levees and flooded the lower Ninth Ward in order to save some of the more expensive property in the lakefront area.
This week marks the anniversary of one of the worst urban disasters in U.S. history, when New Orleans was devastated by Hurricane Katrina. 20 years later, parts of the city still have not fully recovered, and today it has about 3/4 of the population it had before the storm. Some neighborhoods have come back and are thriving, but in others, like New Orleans' lower Ninth Ward, NPR's Greg Allen reports that recovery still seems years, maybe decades away.
A drive through New Orleans' lower Ninth Ward takes you past train tracks, boarded homes, empty, overgrown lots, and block after block where there are few people or houses. In 2005, 15,000 people, mostly African Americans, lived in this neighborhood. Today, the population is a third of that. For many of the people who returned to rebuild their homes and lives after the storm, it's been difficult. Neighbors are gone. There are still few stores or schools. And for some, Burnell Coughlin says, life remains a daily struggle.
This is not a third world country. This is New Orleans. No, we're only 10 minutes from the French Quarters, and the people that's here in the Lower Ninth Ward, they're still suffering.
Cotlin's little grocery store on Fats Domino Avenue is one of a handful of stores that has opened in the Lower Ninth Ward in the 20 years since the storm. It's just several blocks from the place where flood walls toppled over on the Industrial Canal, unleashing a flood that washed away homes, including, Cotlin says, the one he'd bought after retiring from the Army.
I lost everything. I had to start life all over. I had like 30 plus some neighbors. Today I have 4. There's nothing back here.
Cotlin says he'd never heard the term food desert until after Katrina, when he found there was nowhere in his neighborhood to buy something to eat. He purchased a concrete block building that survived the flood, rehabbed it, and opened his market. Inside the store, he shows us where he first began serving customers.
This was the grocery store window. When I tell you everything went out this window, I sold milk, eggs, bread, cheese, you name it, it went out of this window. I did this for about almost 3 years.
There are a few other businesses in the Lower Ninth Ward now, some gas stations, a dollar store, and after running the store for more than a decade, Cotlin's is no longer open every day. After 20 years, he says, it's clear that few additional former residents are coming back. Any growth and rebuilding in the Lower Ninth Ward will have to be from newcomers. And he hasn't seen a lot of new folks coming in.
People forgot about the Lower Ninth Ward. I got to stay strong and positive, but sometimes it hurts. It hurts because when I drive from my house to come here, I remember, oh, they had a store here. They had a school here. We had a hospital here. We had everything back here.
New Orleans City Council member Oliver Thomas says people who visit the Lower Ninth today may not know what it was like when he was growing up there in the early 1960s.
At one point, we were a booming population of over 20,000 people. One of the largest African-American communities where 61% of us owned our own homes. And it was a working class community. We may not have lived in mansions or palaces, but the people in the Lower Ninth Ward owned their property. It was ours.
Cynthia Gilmet also grew up here and recalls an earlier flood from Hurricane Betsy in 1965. In that storm, levees on the Mississippi River and the Industrial Canal breached, flooding the neighborhood. The difference, she says, is that after that storm, the neighborhood bounced back.
After Betsy in 65, everyone returned because the water went away quickly. Everyone returned, and everyone started rebuilding. The residents at that time, the parents, were younger, so that made a difference between then and coming back with Katrina.
Councilman Thomas says the distribution of money after Katrina discriminated against residents in the Lower Ninth Ward and other neighborhoods by basing grants on their home's value before the storm, not on the cost of rebuilding. Now, 2 decades on, he says many who couldn't return have left their properties to their children.
A lot of it was tied up in red tape with families and heirs, liens, taxes on properties. That's one of the things that probably would have helped if the state and the city would have helped cut the red tape to who had rights to property. And then a lot of the speculators bought up hoards of blighted property or vacant property, and many of them are still holding on to it now.
Here and there in the Lower Ninth, there are some good things happening. The old Holy Cross High School, shuttered since Katrina, has been redeveloped as an apartment building with a promise that it will attract new residents to the community. And as you drive from the French Quarter over the St. Claude Bridge into the Lower Ninth, one of the first businesses you see is a new produce market. It was opened by Sankofa, a local nonprofit. Rashida Ferdinand is its director.
Sankofa is a word from Ghana in West Africa, and it's a concept that means go back to the past to build for the future.
In the market, there are tomatoes, greens, eggplants, okra, sweet potatoes, much of it locally grown. It's the only place in the neighborhood where you can find fresh produce. Ferdinand grew up in the Lower Ninth and after college came back.
I think as soon as I came home, I wanted to be involved in that energy to really support rebuilding this area. And folks were getting together and trying to do some good things, and I wanted to be a part of it.
She founded Sankofa more than a decade ago to help rebuild the place where she grew up. The market, she says, is one of several projects in the works.
All of our spaces are intended to be hubs of fun, of recreation, of education, of vitality, and so this market is one of those spaces centered around healthy food.
Several blocks away, Sankofa has transformed empty lots into a vegetable farm.
These are marigolds that we're growing along with our okra.
Marlon Ford, an urban agriculture specialist from Southern University, works with volunteers and members of the community. Among other things, he shows them how to raise and harvest okra.
Look at the beautiful flower. And see, the key to it, you don't want it to get too large. 3 inches, and then you cut with a slant. If you cut it wrong, you open it up for disease.
Sankofa is working on a plan to transform some 40 acres of vacant lots in the lower ninth into vegetable gardens. The group has also helped build a park and nature trail in a wetlands area that had been a site for illegal dumping. The idea, Ferdinand says, is create events and spaces that help build community. City officials support Sankofa's work, but after languishing for 2 decades, she says what the lower ninth really needs is a systematic governmental plan to rebuild the neighborhood.
The investment is not here. There's consistent blight, pervasive blight. There's not even planning data that's been created and assessed. So having an intentional plan to build, redevelop a space is the first step.
As of now, the main government agency with a plan for the lower ninth is the Port of New Orleans. It's approved a new grain terminal with rail lines running through the neighborhood. Homeowners worry it will undercut their efforts to attract new people to a neighborhood that too often has been neglected. With producer Marisa Peñalosa, I'm Greg Allen, NPR News, New Orleans.
When you think about the dispersal of black Americans across 49 states, nearly every state in the union, even when they were received in open arms, think about Houston initially. It got kind of thick up in there.
In Houston's toughest neighborhood, police on patrol, trying to stem a rising tide of violence since 150,000 evacuees arrived from New Orleans. Police here say the vast majority of hurricane evacuees are honest citizens, but a small group of violent New Orleans criminals is now fighting for a share of Houston streets. Evacuees are suspects in at least 15 murders here since September 1st. 18 murder victims had also relocated from Louisiana.
What amazes me is that people said, and even among black people, well, these New Orleans folk coming out here, oh yeah, Houston was a hotbed of civic politeness before they arrived here. There was no crime problem. I guess Scarface and the Ghetto Boys were just making all of that stuff up. Never seen a man cry till I seen a man die. Yeah, I guess that was a cartoon character. The point is that there was huge racial tension introduced as a result of this dispersal that very few people speak about.
20 years ago, Hurricane Katrina destroyed New Orleans. At least 100,000 people found refuge in Houston in the aftermath of the storm. Houston Public Media's Dominic Anthony Walsh tells us how they reshaped the cultural landscape of the largest city in Texas.
When Jermaine Moore needs a haircut, he looks for barbers from New Orleans. At a Shaving Grace barbershop in the southeast Houston area, he's found one.
New Orleans barbers cut different. Our hair texture is different. This is not processed, this is my mother, but everybody can't cut it.
Moore is retired now. Before 2005, he lived a comfortable life as an IT professional in New Orleans. That changed after Katrina destroyed his home. While staying with family in Houston, he turned on the TV and saw his house in the floodwaters.
Underwater, under siege. Floodwaters paralyze New Orleans as
and here I am watching NBC going, oh crap, that's my house.
And good evening again from New Orleans tonight, a city underwater.
Some of them house in the news. Watched everything float away and looking down at that overnight bag, realizing that and my truck outside, that's all I got left. Yeah.
He says he realized he would have to stay in Houston after he went back to New Orleans to survey the damage.
You know what it's like to stand in an American city and hear not a bird chirp, not a cricket. You hear nothing. It is the smell of absolute death. I've never smelled anything like that in my life. And you start to wonder, can I live here?
Back then, many residents of New Orleans were asking the same question. Exactly how many people came to Houston is hard to say, with researchers and former city officials putting the number anywhere from 100,000 to 300,000. Tens of thousands are estimated to remain. 20 years later, they've changed Houston, and Houston has changed them. Jermaine Moore met his wife in Houston. He also found a barber from New Orleans.
You don't want no ball, you want life aid, mid-life aid, I got you. Can you get me here? Thank you. For sure.
John Speedy Riddle started cutting hair about a decade after he arrived in Houston at the age of 15. His family home also flooded during Katrina. Aside from short visits, his family never returned. Still, he finds meaning in the loss.
I would have never got to live the life I've experienced up to 35 years old if it wouldn't have been for Katrina.
He was among as many as 6,000 students from New Orleans who came to the Houston Independent School District, with thousands more attending schools outside the city after Katrina interrupted the beginning of their school year. The memories of the evacuation still bring tears to Riddle's eyes. But Moore says there's more to the story than pain.
Katrina hurt, but you're supposed to find a blessing in a curse.
I finished high school out here. I don't think I would have, at 15, the life I was living in New Orleans, the things I got away with that my parents don't know, I wouldn't have made it.
No.
I wouldn't have lasted this long.
Right. See, Houston, for him, at 15, turn around, showed him a completely different path.
It showed me childhood.
Yeah, he lost his community in New Orleans. The curse, the blessing, look at him.
I found a tribe here.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Blessing and a curse.
Those who left added to Houston's diversity. Bong Mui was among the estimated 15,000 people from Louisiana's Vietnamese community who came to the city after the storm. A doctor, his home and family medicine clinic flooded during the storm.
I really love New Orleans and I really wanted to come back, but when he came back and I saw that everything completely destroyed, I just couldn't go back.
Mui was already familiar with loss. He was 8 years old when Vietnam was split in 1954, and his family left everything behind during the move from the communist north to the south. 20 years later, he was studying in the U.S. when Saigon fell, and he wasn't able to return.
I lost everything.
In 2005, he had to start over, a third time. He brought his family to Houston and opened a new clinic. He felt at home among the large existing Vietnamese community, which he says was more lively than the fishing communities of Louisiana.
In New Orleans, the majority of them are fishermen and things like that. And there's some cultural thing going on, but there's nothing as compared to Houston.
Sociologist Jim Elliott with Rice University also left after Katrina and eventually settled in Houston. He says the cultural impact of the evacuees is undeniable.
We have to keep in mind that this was the largest evacuation in terms of numbers and completeness in U.S. history.
Exactly how large, it's hard to know. And it's difficult to say how many stayed long term. Do Elliott and his wife count among that number?
We did not immediately evacuate, but eventually we evacuated, then we moved to another state, and now we're in Houston. So are we New Orleans evacuees?
Either way, those who remained changed the culture, bringing to Houston New Orleans-style jazz, events like the White Linen Night block parties, and Cajun twists on existing dishes like gumbo and crawfish boils.
We have incredibly diverse cities. So what the New Orleanians did, I suspect, is they entered into this sort of gumbo, if you will, and began to add a little bit of this and a little bit of that.
20 years later, tens of thousands of New Orleanians, including Jermaine Moore and John Riddle, see Houston as a place of new beginnings, opportunity, and community. They also see more of New Orleans in Houston.
The good part that has changed, our influence. I can find daiquiris now.
Yeah.
I can find food like home now.
I can go to H-E-B and buy blue plate mayonnaise and Patton's hot sausage from Fiesta.
I know that sounds stupid, but y'all don't understand how important that is to us.
Because certain dishes can't be made with certain, they gotta have some, I can't put Hellman's in my potato salad. It has to be blue plate.
No, it has to be blue plate. Couldn't find that 20 years ago. So there's the change. I can find more remnants of home, actual home. 20 years ago, we were fish out of water.
They say with the curse of losing home, there's also the blessing of finding and changing Houston. For News 88.7 In Depth, I'm Dominic Anthony Walsh.
Why haven't you learned anything?
20 years ago, Hurricane Katrina opened the door for Louisiana state officials to transform New Orleans public schools. In the years following the storm, officials replaced most of the city's traditional schools with charter schools and often closed them when test scores got too low. Aubrey Uhas of member station WWNO joins us now to talk about the churn of New Orleans charter system and what it's meant for families. And she's with us now. Aubrey, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So before Katrina hit, New Orleans schools were generally seen to be in rough shape. As briefly as you can you explain why and why the move to charter schools in particular?
Yeah, so the story starts, like for a lot of systems with white flight picking up in the 1970s. Schools suffered from neglect, mismanagement, and in New Orleans later, a lot of corruption. By the 90s, many buildings were falling apart, lacked basic supplies like textbooks and toilet paper, and all of that obviously impacted student achievement. Test scores in New Orleans were among the lowest in Louisiana when Katrina hit, and only about half of all students graduated from high school on time. One former teacher told me it felt like the school system had reached the end of its life. So then the storm hit and schooling in the city came to a complete stop. Buildings had been destroyed, teachers and students were displaced. And in that pause, state officials hit reset. They took over most of the city's public schools and over the next decade turned all of them into charter schools.
Aubrey, how did people in New Orleans feel about that? Because I have to say that in the times that I've been in New Orleans reporting on this, the thing that I heard over and over again is that many people felt like this was something that the state was doing to them, not with them. Did you find that in your reporting?
Yeah, I mean, I think people agreed that the system needed to change, but this takeover was a hostile one. Like you said, it was not something that was done with community involvement. There were clear, racial tensions, like this majority black city, majority black teachers, and white lawmakers and other charter leaders from outside of the city all of a sudden making all of the decisions and really trying to wipe the slate clean. Teachers, mostly black teachers, lost their jobs. The names on buildings were changed. Carlos Luis Zervigon attended and taught in the city schools before Katrina. And he says a lot of people felt like they lost their homes in the storm and then their schools.
For those who were here, for those who remember, the wound will not go away. It will not, because it was trauma upon trauma.
Eventually, the state gave control over the schools back to the city, and by then local officials were on board with this idea of an all-charter system. And that's the main reason we ended up with the public school system we have today, where the district only runs one of its more than 60 schools directly. The rest are charter schools.
Okay, so go back to charter schools. Why charter schools specifically? What made them so appealing?
Yeah, so back in the 2000s, if you can remember, charter schools were this popular bipartisan idea. And just to remind folks, these are free schools, they're publicly funded, and in Louisiana, they're run by nonprofit, non-elected boards, though they have to answer to local school boards. And the idea was to empower individual schools to make their own decisions and empower parents to decide where to send their kids, inserting some competition into public education. For New Orleans, it meant freeing schools from a system that a lot of people felt was barely functioning at the time. And they also created a mechanism to close schools that officials thought were failing. Closures happen frequently, even, today, and they can be really painful and disruptive for families, so that's definitely a huge trade-off. But the system has also scored some wins.
Okay, well, so tell us about that. What were some of the ways families benefited here?
Yeah, I mean, because this was a really novel experiment at the time, there was so much support from outside of the city coming in. People who wanted to open schools, work in them, money, other resources. And in terms of the numbers, test scores and graduation rates increased dramatically in the decade after the storm, and they still look pretty good today. Some researchers like Doug Harris of Tulane University attribute those gains to what I was talking about earlier, the district's willingness to close schools.
If you close low-performing schools, students end up in better schools, and they do better, which sounds really obvious when you put it that way, but I think is not how it typically happens in most places.
So you've been talking to families who've experienced school closures. What did they tell you?
Yeah, let me introduce you to Danielle Smith.
I'm a mother of a child that knows where we came from.
Her daughter Kyla has a learning disability, and Smith says at school she didn't always get the support she needed.
We came from an adult space.
But when she got to high school at Living School, things were different. The school's slogan was learn by doing. Students tended banana trees in biology and started their own businesses.
I felt that was interesting because learning as you go was something different.
Everyone was learning at their own pace, Smith says, and Kyla really thrived.
She developed a strong sense of confidence.
Living School's charter was up for renewal Kyla's junior year. And while the school board looks at a lot of different factors, test scores carried the most weight. And Living School's scores had recently dipped. It received a failing grade from the state, and local officials started talking about closing the school.
Good evening. I'm calling to order the Orleans Parish School Board business meeting for December 4th.
At a school board meeting, the district superintendent, Avis Williams, gave her recommendation.
Living School non-renewal, and same reason, an F as
That night, more than 20 people asked the board to reconsider, including current and former students Genesis Baptiste Bustillo, Rical Hooker, and Rio Valdez.
Without this school and the teachers that actually care about your learning, I would fail math so fast. I promise you I would not be in college right now.
I probably would not have graduated.
In response, longtime board member Nolan Marshall acknowledged one of the biggest flaws in the city's school system. It was supposed to accommodate innovation, he said, so schools could help students. That's what Living School was doing. And yet,
you are judged by test scores more than anything else. We all know that that's unfair, but it is the system that we have.
The district now weighs student growth more heavily, but that change came too late for Living School. Ultimately, the board voted to close it in 2024. Danielle Smith says she and her daughter were devastated.
The sense of peace was gone. When I know I had the school was closed, and I was like, oh my God, like, where are we going to go now?
There's definitely a limit to how far you can go with this strategy.
Tulane's Doug Harris has been studying New Orleans' charter school system for over a decade.
One way to think about it is that we went from being an F to a C, but I don't think this strategy gets you from a C to even a B.
And that means the system needs to try something different if it wants to keep getting better.
So what's next for New Orleans? Is it time for the city to transition to something else, or are charters there to stay?
Yeah, I mean, charter schools are definitely here to stay. They've brought a lot of good to the city. But an all-charter system, maybe not that. Carlos Luis Zervigon, the former teacher I spoke to, is now on the school board. He points out that charter schools here are more closely regulated than they were in the beginning, and they have far fewer freedoms than charter schools elsewhere.
We do have a system, just a different system. And I'd say it is guided by the principle that we believe if it works, do it. If it don't work, stop doing it. If it needs changing, change it.
Zervigon says the next step is to be less reliant on charters to make sure the city's kids get a good education. He wants the district to consider running some schools directly when it makes sense. Last year, for the first time in a while, the school district opened a school of its own. And that's something that, felt pretty impossible just 5 years ago.
Aubrey Uhas reports on education from member station WWNO in New Orleans. Aubrey, thank you.
You're welcome.
You're fired.
You may have heard in our earlier podcast the news that President Trump had ordered the sacking of Lisa Cook, the first black woman governor of the U.S. Federal Reserve. He's accused her of making false statements on mortgage agreements.
Look, I had a legal fight that went on for years with crooked people, horrible people, people that have been found out now. She seems to have had an infraction, and she can't have an infraction, and especially that infraction, because she's in charge of, if you think about it, mortgages, and we need people that are 100% above board.
But Lisa Cook is fighting back, saying the president doesn't have the power to dismiss her. It is a crucial question because the Fed's independence is seen as essential in underpinning the U.S. economy. Kenneth Rogoff is a former chief economist at the International Monetary Fund.
This is a threat to financial stability, inflation stability, not just in the U.S., but over the whole world, because the dollar is the bulwark of international markets. So I don't think it's a good move. Federal Reserve independence has served us well, and unlike Supreme Court judges, they don't have infinite terms.
I heard more about the standoff from our New York business correspondent, Erin Delmore.
We are definitely in the middle of unprecedented, uncharted territory here with this story. But what we know is that Lisa Cook, via her lawyer, we've learned that she intends to fight this. And they are pointing out that no indictment has been filed, no charges have been filed here. And so she can basically petition the courts to get an injunction so that she can stay in place in her job as this plays out through in the legal system.
Tell us how the independence of the Fed works.
Well, the Fed, as you say, is independent, and what that means is that it is insulated from political pressure. There are members of the Federal Reserve Board of Governors, and they meet, we report very heavily on their meetings, and decide whether or not to cut interest rates, among other things. But it is a decision among professionals in economics, people who are selected by presidents and have a very long term. In fact, Lisa Cook's wasn't due until 2038 is the year that I believe she was due to be up on her term. And they vote. But that said, presidents are able to choose who goes onto this board. And if she does leave, then President Trump would be able to nominate another person. It would be his fourth in the 7-member group, which would then give him a majority. And then if Jerome Powell, the Federal Reserve Chair, leaves his post in May, President Trump could appoint someone else, and then that would give him 5 seats. So there is politics in the way that people are nominated, but politics does not have a role really in how they govern. So this is something different that we're seeing with President Trump, sights being set here.
Yeah, he's been very vocal about his calls for interest rate cuts. How are the markets likely to respond to this increase in political pressure on the Fed?
You know, over the past couple of months, we have chiefly seen President Trump criticize Fed Chair Jerome Powell, and we did see the markets in the past move based on that, and then we began to see markets become a bit numb to it. And today, in fact, we're seeing that markets are little changed. The S&P is flat. The two other indexes are only ever up or down by, a couple hundredths of a percentage point, which we also consider flat. So markets are little changed. We are seeing some movement in the, longer-term Treasury yields. That's something. But overall, we're seeing investors largely shrug this off, which is a bit of a surprising development, not necessarily what it looked like when markets opened at 9:30 a.m. here in New York, at least. That said, the Fed is overwhelmingly expected to cut interest rates in September. That was the expectation before any of this transpired. So an interest rate cut is something that has been extremely likely for some time now.
Erin Delmore in New York.
For more on President Trump's plan to create what he's calling a specialized unit of D.C. National Guard troops dedicated to public safety, Christopher Purdy is on the line with us. He served for 8 years in the Army National Guard. He's now the CEO of the Chamberlain Network, a pro-democracy advocacy group made up of veterans. So, Christopher, past presidents have assembled specialized National Guard units to carry out particular missions, and you were part of one after the 9/11 attacks. How would you say the scope of this unit compares to the one you served in?
Yeah, thanks for having me, So there's still much we don't know about this order, how it's going to be implemented. The unit that I served in was about the size of 300 to 400 people. And this was composed of elements from the Air Force and Army National Guard from different states. And this was really designed to be a quick reaction force. So states would volunteer either company or platoon size elements, about 100 or so troops for this particular mission. But we don't know how this is going to be implemented, so we don't know if we're looking at an element that size, a smaller element, which means that people could potentially volunteer into this, or a larger battalion size element, 700 to 1,000 troops or so. So there's still lots up in the air about this plan. It's not entirely clear if this is one unit that's being discussed in this executive order, or multiple. So these are some real questions that we have.
And back then, is it fair to say that the mission for you and the people around you were to save Americans from terrorism back then? What does the mission appear to be here?
Yeah, that's right. So in the mid-2000s, I was a combat engineer, and this was right after 9/11, and we were out there training on disaster recovery, search and rescue, medical services, things like that. The scope of this mission is quite dangerous, and what this does is it will bring National Guard troops more into law enforcement role, which your previous guest talked about. The dangers of that, the laws around that are really confusing and complex. So sending troops nestled under a DC National Guard out to communities in Idaho or Illinois or Texas to do law enforcement really kind of flies in the face of the principles that we have in this democracy of civilian control of the military.
If this was you, Christopher, and say you're going to be sent out, how would you approach this job or this mission?
That's really difficult. I don't feel like I would be comfortable participating in a mission that has me as a quick reaction force, for example, to police my community members for First Amendment speech violations, for example. We know that this president does not like protests, and in the wake of the 2020 protests, he tried to send the National Guard in to really crack down. I would feel really uncomfortable using my presence as a member of the military to participate in that.
So if you would feel uncomfortable, it's obviously just a guess on our part, but there would be at least one or two others that are serving now that might also feel uncomfortable?
Yeah, and so we're speaking to members of the National Guard right now who have been deployed and are at risk of being called up, and there is real worry within the Guard that they would be misused against American citizens, and so really trying to determine what are the rules that Guard members are going to be asked to implement. So I would say morale within the Guard units that have been activated really plummets when this happens. No one wants to be used as a police force against their own neighbors. If these Guard members did want to become police, they would have gone into law enforcement, but they didn't. They served in the Army National Guard to defend their country against against enemies, and being used in this way really violates the principle of which they served.
Based on what you've seen or heard from the president's executive order, is it clear to you how the chain of command would work here, especially if a governor doesn't want their state guard to be used this way?
That's really the key issue for me. So the way that I interpret this executive order is that states would send their troops to be nestled under the D.C. National Guard, which, as your previous guest mentioned, is controlled by the president. And the way that the laws around military and policing work is federalized troops cannot be used for law enforcement. But since the D.C. National Guard is technically not federalized, but controlled by the president, that would be a workaround around this issue. And so we think that that's quite dangerous, and we would really urge courts to reject this theory, because it fundamentally undercuts the Posse Comitatus Act, which ensures the president can't use the military as a domestic police force.
Well, I was going to ask then about maybe broader implications in terms of the president's use of executive power.
I mean, what this does is it retools both the National Guard and some federal agencies into a new type of law enforcement arm. We haven't discussed the other part of this executive order. On the executive branch side of things, it converts agencies that typically don't do a lot of public policing, like the Park Service, Department of Transportation, even the Department of Housing and Urban Development, into agencies that would have more of a law enforcement role. So this order is quite expansive and quite dangerous.
Christopher Purdy is an Army National Guard veteran who served in Iraq. He's also the CEO of the Chamberlain Network. Christopher, thanks.
Thank you.
They say chocolate sit pat. That's right.
Nearly 8 in 10 people in Washington, D.C. oppose the president's takeover of the police department, according to a recent poll conducted by the Washington Post. In interviews with NPR, many say that crime is a legitimate problem, and they welcome more law enforcement. But they worry that President Trump is using it for his own ends. NPR's Frank Langfitt reports from Washington.
When Nancy Barnes first heard the president wanted to take over the D.C. police and deploy the National Guard, she hated the idea.
I thought that was absurd, and I thought it would not happen.
Why did you think it was absurd?
Because obviously we're not in the middle of a giant riot or anything that would necessitate having the National Guard here.
Barnes is a former public school drama teacher. She lives in a gentrifying neighborhood on the edge of Capitol Hill. Barnes generally feels safe here, but she also says it can be a free-for-all. Several weeks ago, someone drove a motorcycle down the sidewalk and nearly ran her down. On Friday evenings, upwards of 20 men roar down the street on deafening ATVs, which are illegal in D.C. When Barnes heard federal agents had arrested an ATV driver earlier this month, she had a visceral reaction.
I couldn't help it, like it came from my toes. Oh my God, someone arrested an ATV driver, that's amazing! I just felt like someone was doing something.
Barnes knows many other neighborhoods face far greater risks, but she also says she'd love to see more law enforcement. Barnes posted her thoughts on Facebook. A friend of hers, DJ Paul, responded sarcastically. Here, he read from his post.
Yeah, let's call in the military because of these quality of life issues you mentioned. That seems like a reasonable response.
Barnes had never suggested that, and Paul later apologized, adding this in an interview with NPR.
This administration is tapping into something that existed already. They're not fabricating something. People don't feel safe.
Just a 12-minute drive away lies the Deanwood neighborhood. Last February, 2 people were shot to death in a dilapidated apartment building with blown-out windows. Justina Wilkins Jordan is sitting on the porch of her hair salon here.
There's a lot of shootings going on. There's a lot of congregation of young people just starting fights. And the drug transactions is really heavy.
Like Nancy Barnes, she wants more security on the streets.
I feel that it's needed to clean up and to be safe in this community.
But Wilkins Jordan says she hasn't seen any federal officers in her neighborhood. Even as she welcomes more law enforcement, she says she doesn't trust the president's motives. Wilkins Jordan thinks he's using Washington's crime problem to expand his power and undermine the city's democratic leadership.
I think that he wants to destroy the Democratic Party. He knows that he can go into these cities that runs by a Democrat and control it and say, hey, we don't need Democrats. They are not doing an effective job.
If President Trump were sitting in this chair right now, what would you tell him?
I would say, President Trump, sit down and listen. It's not all about you and the Republicans. You can't control the world. I feel that right now the reason why he's doing it, because he definitely want to be a dictator.
President Trump insists he's just trying to protect people from what he says is a crime emergency in Washington, even though the U.S. Justice Department has said violent crime here fell to a 30-year low in 2024.
The press says he's a dictator, he's trying to take over. No, all I want is security for our people.
D.C. police crime data shows no reported homicides since August 14th and no carjackings in the past week. On the drive back to the office, I came across a fresh crime scene. I spoke with police. Some were laying down white cards on the sidewalk to mark where a half a dozen shell casings had landed.
I'm Frank. I'm with NPR. What happened?
Any just some shots fired in this area.
Did anyone get shot?
No.
Witnesses told me two men opened fire at each other across an intersection in front of an auto mechanic shop. Kambemboma owns the place.
You know, some adolescent guys, they're just going crazy, doing wild stuff.
Have you seen any FBI or National Guard around here?
No.
And how quickly did the D.C. police respond to the shooting?
3 minutes. In 2 minutes, they were here.
So do you think D.C. needs the National Guard and the FBI doing this stuff on crime?
Not to my knowledge.
Unlike Wilkins Jordan, Mboma says police around here are responsive. He thinks they can handle crime on their own. And Mboma says the deployment of federal forces makes people he knows feel less safe. Frank Langford, NPR News, Washington.
The man knot, race, class, genre, and the dilemmas of black manhood.
Work of the juvenile justice system leaves children in many states sitting behind bars doing time that does not count toward any kind of sentence. There's a name for it, dead time, and it is an unintended consequence of a system that is supposed to be rehabilitative. Caitlin Thompson of NPR's investigations team found out what this means for kids who are locked up.
In the adult system, it's pretty clear-cut. A person convicted of a crime is sentenced to a period of incarceration, say a year in county jail or 20 years in a federal prison. Any time they spend in jail pre-trial counts towards their sentence. For kids, it's fuzzier. A young person who breaks the law might be locked up for an indeterminate amount of time while they complete some sort of program to help turn their life around. The problem is, before they even start that program, kids can spend months, maybe more than a year, waiting in detention. In a lot of places, those months don't count toward the time they'll have to spend in secure confinement. It's dead time, in a place most people would think of as a jail.
This is a little jail. Everything is the same, except for the ages of the inmates, the kids.
The first time LJ was sent to the juvenile detention center outside of Philadelphia, he'd been caught hanging out with friends in an abandoned building. He was charged with criminal trespassing. The detention center was a tough place to grow up.
It's like a little jungle. Everybody want to be tough. Everybody want to fight. It's just a lot to go through.
He was detained on and off throughout his teenage years. This time was because he escaped. LJ is 23 now, but since he was underage when this happened, NPR agreed not to use his full name. Detention is supposed to be short-term, mostly for people held pre-trial. LJ was held there for about 6 months before a spot opened up in a state-run secure facility. But none of that counted toward the time he was required to spend locked up.
Where was I at 5 Christmas ago, 5 Thanksgivings ago? Like, time where I should have been with my family, out with my friends for birthdays and stuff like that. I'm still here because of time that they didn't count.
Most states around the country don't count the time kids spend in detention, either by law or in practice. NPR found at least 32 states have statutes that deny kids credit. Amy Barrar is a policy specialist at the Galt Center, a national organization working on juvenile justice issues.
It is just time that they are essentially being warehoused that adds considerable time to the amount of time that they are ultimately locked up, incarcerated.
In the most restrictive states, young people don't start working toward a release date until they get to the facility where they'll receive court-ordered services, even if that means they're spending loads of dead time waiting to be transferred.
It really is a waste. It's a waste of their time. It's a waste of a lot of resources time that kids spend locked up has extraordinarily negative impact on them.
The purpose of locking up kids isn't meant to be punitive. Eduardo Ferrer is a lawyer at the Juvenile Justice Initiative at Georgetown University.
It really is supposed to provide rehabilitation to kids, or quote-unquote rehabilitation to kids, at the same time that it's supposed to keep the community safe. So the idea wasn't to punish them, but the idea was to really provide them with the services and supports they needed to thrive.
But detention centers don't offer all those services. No rehabilitative program, no credit. So kids languish in dead time. Anne-Marie Ambrose works on alternatives to detention, but she used to run the juvenile justice departments in Philadelphia and the state of Pennsylvania.
In some ways, it's a huge violation of their due process because they end up staying in a very punitive environment. It absolutely makes no sense.
To others, detention plays an important role.
We have to remember, why are they detained?
Sam Abbott is the director of the Department of Youth Rehabilitation Services in Washington, D.C. Kids there can spend months waiting for a spot in a rehabilitative program with no credit.
We need to remember that a young person was at least initially assessed by a justice agency as being a public safety risk and deemed that we need to hold you there because of the risk that you pose to the community's safety.
Abid says his team is working to transfer kids faster, but dead time, it's just the way the system works.
You can't give credit for something when there is no finite time. It's impossible. So there's no constitutional violation at all because there isn't a concept of credit for time served.
But some states like New Jersey, Kansas, and Georgia do credit time in detention pretty much like the adult system. In the wake of the pandemic, dead time became a crisis in Philadelphia. It's gotten better, but at one point, records show kids sat in detention for 6 to 9 months after their court case finished, just waiting for a vacant spot in a state facility. Kids like Tyler McDaniels.
I'm getting all the time taken away from me. I'm not benefiting from it because I put myself inside the predicament, but y'all are supposed to be here to help me.
McDaniels didn't get credit for the 4.5 months he was held while his case for a couple of charges, including gun possession, was in court. Keeping a kid in detention in Philadelphia is expensive. Public records show at the time McDaniels was there, it cost about $600 a night per kid. So more than 4 months of dead time, around $80,000. With no rehabilitative program and no sense of when he would start working toward his release, McDaniels started acting out.
I went in there and it got worse. I started getting madder fast. Like I started getting exposed to all these other different personalities on top of dealing with my own stuff. So it's like I'm not thinking it through. I'm just being impulsive.
Research shows kids who are incarcerated are less likely to graduate high school, less likely to participate in the workforce, and more likely to reoffend. But studies also show kids often age out of delinquent behavior. McDaniels is 21 now, and he's back in school. He spoke with the governor about his experiences, and he's trying to help kids who are going through the same things he went through. LJ is doing well too, but being locked up still didn't feel rehabilitative.
I really did not know it wasn't a punishment. I thought, like, you did what you did, this what comes with it. I really thought that's just how it was. It's news to me that it's not.
Both kids said that turning their lives around has been in spite of their time incarcerated, not because of it. Caitlin Thompson, NPR News.
I'm getting in the elevator, and these 2 high school white boys tried to get on with me. And I just dove off. I said, y'all ain't killing me. I am scared of young white boys. If you white and under 21, I am running for the hill. What the hell is wrong with these white kids shooting up the school?
Texas Tech University is now one of several college campuses across the country to fall victim to a school shooting hoax within the last week. After reports of a threat on campus here late today, law enforcement responded quickly to the architecture building near 18th Street and Flint Avenue.
KCBD News Channel 11's Brittany Crittenden has what we know about the false alarm and how it impacted some Red Raiders.
Texas Tech students were sitting in their afternoon classes on only their third day of school when all of a sudden police officers swarmed the College of Architecture.
Yeah, we saw videos like our friends were showing us of like the policemen with the guns like around the building, and we're architecture majors too.
At 5:15, the Lubbock Police Department received its first report of an active shooter on campus.
Our professor kind of just like, he was like on the phone like 3 times. Like he got 3 phone calls. He was just telling us to like calm down, we were good, and nothing was gonna happen.
Dalton Gebhardt was actually in the architecture building when the reports were coming in.
It was kind of like, dang. I mean, you know, thinking about it, shooter's not just going to go into architecture class and start shooting people up. Like, it's kind of crazy. I mean, it could happen, but realistically, I don't think it would. Plus, like, the police were already, like, there, so.
Another student who was in an art class in the architecture building said 2 officers interrupted class and asked if anyone heard gunshots. The officers moved on, searching for a threat. She said students were left wondering what to do. At 5:42, the university posted to social media that Texas Tech police immediately responded and law enforcement thoroughly investigated. They determined this was a false alarm.
So, like, after that happened, I was like, couldn't really focus. It's like, dang, like, that could have just happened.
The swatting incident follows several others in the last week at college campuses across the country, like Villanova, the University of Arkansas, and Kansas State University. Not only do these harmful prank calls disrupt what's going on in the classroom.
It stopped them 3 times, so we barely got through like the syllabus and stuff, so we didn't really get to the stuff that we really need to get to.
Yeah, and it's crazy. You always see it on the news, like stuff like that happening, and then I never like experienced that kind of thing.
But the FBI says they drain law enforcement resources, cost a lot of money, and put innocent people at risk.
Like, it's happening everywhere too, like high schools and stuff like that. Like, they changed like rules and stuff for it and stuff. Like in high school, before I left, we had to lock every door like everywhere we went. Yeah. So it's just like it's becoming a big thing.
Police believe these calls may be coming from an organized group that's called in threats to more than 10 universities since August 21st. Brittany Crittenden, KCBD News Channel 11.
Listen, just touching on some real issues right here tonight. That's all. I want y'all to observe the excellence here. BX providing the Sonics, my man, Minnesota. I'm letting the beat ride out because it's a part that I like when it come up, you know what I'm saying? I take this time to say what's up to my family. You hear that? You know what I'm saying?
For sure.
Just observe the excellence of that. That's many.
Hey, back. Fall back.
With the guitars. It's hip-hop music. It's good enough to speak for itself. And you got to do right by it. Minnesota.
Ain't no black people in Minnesota.
Today, FBI Director Kash Patel posted on X that yesterday's mass shooting at a Minneapolis church was, quote, an act of domestic terrorism motivated by a hate-filled ideology. Extremism analysts have been looking through extensive materials that the shooter is presumed to have shared on a YouTube account, and some of these experts say the videos do not paint a picture of any motive. NPR domestic extremism correspondent Odette Youssef joins us now. Hi, Odette.
Hey, Elsa.
Okay, I just want to start with what specifically FBI Director Patel cites as evidence that this attack was ideologically driven. He claims that, let's see, the shooter made, quote, anti-Catholic, anti-religious references, also expressed animus towards Jewish people and Israel, and that the shooter called for violence against President Trump. Now, how does all of that line up with what you and analysts have found?
So I need to preface this with some caveats. First of all, the FBI has access to far more information than I or any extremism researchers can access.
Sure.
Also, the main materials that we've been able to look at are writings presumed to belong to the shooter. That includes journals, which in this case have been phonetically written in English, but with a Cyrillic script. So analysts are actually still working through to translate those full documents. That said, the picture that's emerging for researchers that I've spoken with is quite different from what the FBI is saying. The FBI is highlighting what it is calling anti-Catholic messages, as well as anti-Israel and pro-Palestinian messages. The materials I've seen include, for example, a picture of Jesus crucified that is mounted onto a shooting target. So perhaps anti-Christian, but not specifically anti-Catholic. And more notably, there is a stew of hatreds here. There is anti-Semitism in there. There's also anti-Muslim references. But the bigger point is that to focus on any single one would be to cherry pick. Instead, the overwhelming picture here is of somebody who was obsessed with mass shooters and a specific aesthetic of mass shooters, but not an ideology. The goal was the violence itself and to achieve notoriety through it.
Which seems to echo reporting that you have done on some other school shootings, right? Like I'm thinking of the one at Abundant Life Christian School in Madison, Wisconsin last December. Also one at Antioch High School in Nashville in January, right?
Yes, yeah. And back near, the beginning of the year, the FBI actually created a name for this category of violence called nihilistic violent extremism. Before that, the former head of the FBI sometimes used the phrase salad bar extremism, which kind of illustrates how the radicalization isn't rooted in any single ideology or goal, but it's just kind of picking and choosing from different, sometimes contradictory ones. But there's another trend that analysts say may be at play here, and that is really about an aesthetic that dwells on mental illness, meaning these shooters are in online communities that venerate mass killers and where mental illness is something they want people to associate with them. Now, it's not possible to conclude from watching someone's, curated selection of videos whether they are clinically mentally ill or not. But the aesthetic that this individual stitched together and presented is a familiar one.
Interesting. Well, I also want to mention that there's been a lot of discussion among some conservatives and the media about how the shooter's gender identity may be relevant here. What do the researchers that you're talking to, what are they saying about that?
So in a 2020 court order, it was noted that the shooter, born a male, identifies as a female. Now, the numbers simply don't bear out the idea that trans people are disproportionately responsible for mass shootings in the U.S., but the trans community in the U.S. is vulnerable, and that could potentially make them susceptible to online radicalization in ways others may not be.
That is NPR's Odette Youssef. Thank you, Odette.
Thank you.
I guess, Wayne, you just got to hold that old shotgun in your hand, and it comes clear like it did for me the first time. That's when I realized my one true calling in life.
And what's that, Mickey?
Shit, man. I'm a natural-born killer.
And we now know that the suspected shooter released a series of videos around the same time of the attack.
These are disturbing, but they really provide some insight into what was going on in the shooter's mind when he acted today. Investigative reporter Ryan Raish has spent the day looking through these videos, which and also contained a so-called manifesto. Ryan, what did you find?
Yeah, so right now investigators are poring over these videos scheduled to post on YouTube around the time of the shooting. They were posted under the account of Robin Westman, and they were live for a couple hours before being removed by law enforcement. One of the more jarring images from the videos is this one, the arsenal of guns and ammo on display. Something many of you may have noticed is the written words and names on some of the weapons. One of the guns says, "Kill Trump," and others have the names of notable mass shooters, including Ruppnow, likely a reference to Natalie Ruppnow, the suspected mass shooter in Madison last year. The name Robert Bowers is also written on one of the weapons. He was responsible for the deadliest attack on the Jewish community. We don't know when this video was shot, but there is a reference to tomorrow. Take a listen.
Tomorrow. I'm sorry to my family. But that's it. That's the only people I'm sorry to. Those kids.
It's really disturbing to listen to. In addition to the guns and ammo, the video also flips through these pages of what appears to be a manifesto. It's addressed to my family and friends, saying in part, "I'm a sad person, haunted by these thoughts that do not go away. I know this is wrong, but I can't seem to stop myself." In another video, this one, Westman shows a different letter written in another language, and ending with this map. It appears to be of a church, possibly a critical clue for investigators. Now, we see several guns in those videos. Police say only 3 were used in the attack. Guys, all 3 purchased legally and recently. Lindsay.
All right, that was a point made by the chief earlier today. Thank you so much, Ryan. And soon after the shootings this morning, police swarmed multiple locations connected to the shooting.
Our investigative reporter Eric Rasmussen was first on scene at
We are less than 3 miles from where you are at the school and the church. I want to get out of the way and show you where police were focusing their attention on one of the buildings back here at the Linwood Commons Apartments this afternoon. And now look at this video. A little before 2 p.m., we caught a glimpse of investigators carrying out a large box of evidence. You should see it here in the video. Now, it is hard to make out, but when I was watching this play out in real time, I noticed what appeared to be at least part of a rifle or another firearm in that box. This was all from an apartment on Lyndale Avenue here in Richfield, connected to the suspect. And back at their family's home, a couple of miles away in Minneapolis on South First Avenue, neighbors described to me the chaotic scene when police moved in there.
It was terrifying. I was so scared. I was so afraid because this is a really quiet neighborhood.
I can't imagine the little kids, how they felt about it, the confusion. It'll impact me for life, for sure. And I pray for their family.
We've also learned the suspect's mother worked at the church. The church shared this picture on Facebook back in 2021 saying Mary Grace Westman had just retired from Annunciation. Now, I called and emailed her today, but I have not yet received a response. And back out here live, police wrapped up their search here a few hours ago. Not a lot of people at these apartments are talking, but recently here this evening, I bumped into at least one resident who said she was at least aware of this suspect and had actually raised concerns about what she called strange behavior from that person in the past. We're live here in Richfield tonight. Eric Rasmussen, 5 Eyewitness News. 4, 3, 2, 1.
All right, Eric, thank you so much. Now, earlier today, we spoke with ABC News senior justice correspondent Pierre Thomas about this situation. He says investigators, of course, will be taking a look at every part of the shooter's life, the suspect's life, looking for any clues they can.
I can tell you, having covered many of these cases, they literally will do a deep dive into any type of social media postings. They basically will dissect this person's life, particularly the most recent series of days and months.
And Pierre Thomas also noted that, sadly, mass shootings like this are being more common all across the country.
Sadly, we see this happening routinely in this country. Houses of worship, schools, movie theaters, malls. There's a chronic problem of shootings taking place at soft targets where there are large numbers of people gathered because, unfortunately, the killers know that's where they can do the most damage.
This evening, we're also tracking the latest updates from local, state, and federal authorities who are all part of the investigation in South Minneapolis.
A big focus now is on the killer's motive and how this person was able to carry out the attack. Investigative reporter Eric Rasmussen has been working this part of the story nonstop, and he's here with new information that we've just learned this afternoon.
Investigators revealed they are going through hundreds of pieces of evidence and several electronic devices that belong to the shooter. The hope is that somewhere inside all of it is a specific motive for this attack.
The shooter expressed hate towards black people. The shooter expressed hate towards Mexican people. The shooter expressed hate towards Christian people. The shooter expressed hate towards Jewish people. In short, the shooter appeared to hate all of us.
In this latest briefing, investigators said they're still working to zero in on exactly what triggered Wednesday's mass shooting in Minneapolis. But as we've shown, there is a mountain of evidence that could contain answers.
Literally hundreds of pieces of evidence have been recovered thus far.
5 Eyewitness News is choosing not to show more of this disturbing video manifesto, but some of the handwritten words and symbols in it reveal the killer's obsession with other school shooters and interaction with an online network of extremist groups.
There's actually a lot to learn.
Even if the shooter was not previously on the radar of authorities, retired FBI Special Agent Jeff Van Ness says this person still may have leaked hints of their plans.
We know from the FBI's research that in over 90% of these types of cases, the individual has confided in someone that they plan to do something involving violence.
Investigators say they've now interviewed dozens of people who knew the shooter, including relatives. But Minneapolis Police Chief Brian O'Hara revealed one key person is not yet on that list.
I know we have not been successful in talking to the shooter's mother yet at this time.
As we've reported, the shooter's mother did previously work at Annunciation. Again, investigators tell us they did not have any previous contact with the shooter that they say would have raised concerns about the kind of violence we saw play out on Wednesday. In the newsroom, Eric Rasmussen, 5 Eyewitness News.
This question, why is this stuff happening? The New York Times editorial today. The Trump effect. See, this is what I'm doing with my money, buying newspapers like Dick Gregory. The Trump effect and how it spreads. It says we are on the brink, under Trump, on the brink of fascism. New York Times, all the news that's fit to print, editorial 12/10/2015. I say fascism is end-stage white supremacy. See, just like in Nazi Germany. Fascism, system of racism, white supremacy, determined to survive.
Welcome back, everybody. Kevin Dorn and Lindsey Brown live outside the Church of the Annunciation in South Minneapolis tonight, where earlier today an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old were shot to death, and also 17 other people were injured. As this investigation continues, the big question is about a motive for this tragedy. And tonight, here's what we've learned about the suspect.
We continue digging for more information on this. Police have identified the suspect as 23-year-old Robin Westman. They say Westman was dressed in all black and was armed with a rifle, a shotgun, and a pistol. They say Westman was not known to police and did not have an extensive criminal history. As we've reported, the shooter died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound.
And 5 Investigates has been all over this all day, and they have been digging in to Westman's past, including some disturbing videos he recently posted online.
New tonight, investigative reporter Ryan Ray sat down with a former classmate of Robin Westman and the red flags that she says she saw years ago. Ryan joins us with that conversation.
You guys, Josephina Sanchez says she knew Robin Westman when he was a teen boy with a few friends and some odd obsessions. She says she attended grade school with Robin, who then went by Robert. Looking back, she says she now sees some red flags.
Something I knew was off, but I was a kid. How would I know, what to do?
In the 7th grade, Josephina Sanchez says she struck up a friendship with the boy she knew as Robert Westman. But that friendship was short-lived.
When you see something, it doesn't leave your mind. When you see something erratic, it doesn't leave your mind. So he would put up his hand and say, praise Hitler.
That sort of unusual and disturbing behavior was on full display in a series of videos investigators say Westman scheduled to post on YouTube around the same time as the attack. The videos show ammo, magazines, and guns with the names of other mass shooters.
Tomorrow, I'm sorry to my family. But that's it. That's the only people I'm sorry to.
The videos also include this manifesto that investigators are now combing through, looking for clues of a motive. It's addressed to friends and family and says in part, "I'm tired of the pain this world gives out," adding that "I've wanted this for so long. I am not well. I am not right." Where do you think that's coming from?
I think it's actually spiritual battle. I don't think it's this world. It's demonic. I'm sorry, but it is. And I think we need Jesus. He needed him.
Sanchez says this video of Robin's journal, written in another language, brought back memories of Westman writing in code, so nobody could understand it.
That was kind of triggering. I wish I could have said something sooner, but I was little. How do I know?
All those YouTube videos that were posted have been taken down by law enforcement. And besides the suspected shooter speaking broadly about problems in the world and being suicidal, there's no clear indication of a motive outlined in the writings or the video clips. Kevin.
You hear that? You hear that? Sick transgender sister was writing in code. Writing in code. Katrina 20. Context of white supremacy, Gus T. Renegade, and for another broadcast, hopefully to share constructive information on the global system of white supremacy. Today's date, Saturday, August 30, 2025. So I have been told. Katrina. Our weekly compensatory call-in. Dial in if you have observations, thoughts, counter-racist suggestions. And I asked online, we have any non-white people, attempted parents? Obviously, this would not count if you have like newborns, a 1-year-old, something like that. But if you have children that are, 9, 8, 12, 15, did you make time this week to speak about Hurricane Katrina, what happened 20 years ago? I think that would be important, dare I say, mandatory if you are an attempted black parent and you have offspring classified as black in this part of the world, maybe anywhere in the world, because that was, a global event. Definitely if you were born in this part of the world, oh yeah. Really, in my view, there should not be an August that passes where you don't have a word or two to say about all that. But beyond that, at minimum this year, even if that's something that you bring up every year, like 20 years, they have so many books that have been published and even new books that have come out about all of this. We've read many of them. They have so many documentaries, even new documentaries that have been done. Even Spike Lee did a brand new documentary about Hurricane Katrina and what's happened over the 20 years. So this is his third documentary film about Hurricane Katrina. We heard a little bit from When the Levees Broke in our audio for today. And even I have to put emphasis on Katrina because, hey, I don't have offspring. So there is no, little Gus T. Jr. Or, Eugenia for me to go and grab. And we're going to talk about, Hurricane Katrina, and we'll read a book and discuss, or we'll watch Spike Lee's documentaries, or at least one and discuss, or you go do some research and, what sort of impact did this have on the little people at that time, something. But we here at the Cows have done signature work on Hurricane Katrina, and really from the time we got back on the air. The Cows originated autumn 2007, kicked off the air before the end of the year, hiatus for a year and a half. We got back on in February 2009, right with OBZ. As soon as he came into office, we came back. Great timing. And we've been here ever since, uninterrupted. but one of the first programs, so we came back on the air February 2009, May 2009, one of the first 100 programs we have done. Literally, we have done well over 2,000 programs here at the Context of White Supremacy in our 16 plus years of broadcasting. A.C. Thompson was one of the first 100 programs that we did. In fact, I think A.C. Thompson was one of the first 50 programs of the Context of White Supremacy. What did we talk about with A.C. Thompson, suspected racist? We talked about his work for the nation, white vigilante violence during Hurricane Katrina. In fact, that would be my other question. If you have offspring under 18, not newborns, did you make time to talk about Hurricane Katrina over the past week? Question number 2, has anybody heard about white vigilante violence? They played that audio segment on NPR of retired General Russell Honore, victim of white supremacy, classified as black, well known during Hurricane Katrina. But they had audio of him saying that I don't think the storm discriminated. Oh, man. I beg to differ, sir. VGQ, but I beg to differ. And I would point to the work of A.C. Thompson. He wrote a massively important report that we talked about way back in May 2009. And PBS did a documentary about all of this in 2010 called Law and Disorder. You can maybe even go back and rewatch that now. There were 11 murders during Hurricane Katrina. Not they died in the storm, not they sat around eating po' boys, French fries, pork rinds all day long, potato salad without Hellman's mayonnaise, killed, bullet in the brain, body set on fire. 11 people murdered during Hurricane Katrina. They were all privileged black males, probably raping and looting, but executed. We have talked about even a number of those specific murders. Talked about some of them with A.C. Thompson. He wrote about all of this. He was one of the folks spearheading the effort. In fact, they have whole documentaries where white people eating barbecue sandwiches brag about the black people that they killed during Katrina. Now, have you all seen that? And we'll talk about Katrina 20. That should be front and center. It was not no we all came together and all of that. No. Henry Glover put up some of the names of the Danziger Bridge. That's why I said hey, Gus T, pick one thing if you wanted to brag on the work of the cows. Signature work, Hurricane Katrina, and one reason, because that's not something that we just talked about that one time with A.C. Thompson 2009 and forgot about it. Oh no, you can go all the way forward, 2023. We had Jared Fishman as a guest on the program. What did he write? Fire on the Levee, the murder of privileged black male Henry Glover and the search for justice after Hurricane Katrina. That was in 2023. That's what I mean. Like, man, for 14 years. Yes, we should remember, especially anybody you want to brag. I'm classified as black and I was born in this part of the world. Well, then, man, you should be an expert on Hurricane Katrina. Danziger Bridge should not be a mystery to you. And if it is, you can hit my blog, racism-notes.blogspot.com. I know folks that brag said, I wouldn't dare go check his blog out. Well, I do write constructive. It's not like I'm just on there putting memes and name-calling black people. My book review for Shots on the Bridge, written by Ronnie Green. What is that about? Danziger Bridge, what happened there? Oh my God. Now, What happens when you go on television and lie and say privileged black males are raping babies? They're raping babies. Oh, my Lord. They're ripping the Superdome down and raping babies. Lie. And the looter. So now what happens? Now you have all of these jumpy, edgy New Orleans Police Department or New Orleans enforcement officials who don't have the best reputation anyway. Now they go out and claim, ooh, we're nervous, jumpy, looters, raping, niggers, ooh. And you end up with privileged black males, whole family, but privileged black males get executed on Danziger Bridge. I guess I got to make sure I put the names on. James Brissett, who was 17 years old, that's extra privilege. 40-year-old Ronald Madison, he had developmental problems, but privileged black male, summarily executed on Danziger Bridge. Whole family shot at. What were they doing? Just trying to save their life. You're a gang of looters and rapists. It would be so much to discuss with Hurricane. That's why I said, like, are you serious? What white family got gunned down during Hurricane Katrina walking with shopping bags and suitcases? Thank you, because I ain't say I've read a lot of material on Hurricane Katrina. I ain't read nothing about that. If you want to continue to look through the archive, hey, I said you could read a book, you could watch a documentary, you could listen to C.O.W.S content because we have so much of it. June Cross was a guest on the program. She did the documentary The Old Man and the Storm, PBS. She talked about Lower Ninth Ward. Herbert Getridge, 82-year-old black male, privileged, victim of the storm, lost his house in the Lower Ninth Ward, and he stayed, no electricity, no nothing, and rebuilding by himself with his bare hands like that. Man, black male privilege. When they talked about, man, it looked like they just forgot about Lower Ninth Ward. That's what it looked like with Mr. Getridge. We forgot all, or they didn't forget. We didn't forget, just put the correct word. We didn't forget you niggers at all. You all weren't in the plan anyway. And if you want all the detail on that, Gary Rivlin, Katrina After the Flood, we did the double dip on that one. We read that whole book in the Catherine Massey Book Club for the 10-year recognition of Hurricane Katrina. And we had Gary Rivlin as a guest on the C.O.W.S to go into detail about his studies. He was there during Katrina to cover the military presence that was there, the racism at the center of all of the schools. I thought it was so tacky because Gary Rivlin made sure to tell us in the book and on the program, when they closed those schools, they fired about 4,000 black teachers. He said it decimated the so-called black middle class. They didn't say anything about that. The report from NPR talking about the transition to charter schools and has it improved things. Yeah. All those black people that got fired, black educators, whoa. We lost our house, got flooded out, got to go to Houston, and we've been fired? Anything. Kimberly Rivers Roberts, there is a massive trove of content related to Hurricane Katrina in the C.O.W.S archives. Kimberly Rivers Roberts also did a documentary film, Black Female Victim. She was there during the hurricane. Her documentary is amazing. And she was a guest on the program. We talked a lot of the racism that she and her family experienced and what she saw riding it out through the storm. We even had a white man. I was just thinking like, wow, because I've said for years that our coverage content on Hurricane Katrina is signature work. Absolutely. Maybe put that at the front of the list, although we have a number of different subject matters at this point that I would say are signature works, but that is one. But man, we even had a white man, Gavin S. Johnson, as a guest on the program. He worked at New Orleans Penitentiary, and he was stranded there with it flooded. He was stranded there with his white father and all of the inmates, privileged black males, during the storm, and he wrote a book about that, came on the program. We talked about that as well. That's what I mean. Like, there's a treasure trove of information. Pick one, listen, research, but I think it's super important. This is for sure. It's not ancient history. This happened this century. YouTube existed by the time Hurricane Katrina not quite. YouTube didn't quite exist. So YouTube and Hurricane Katrina the same year, but YouTube didn't come out until later that year. Anyway, this is not an event that we should be ignorant of. This is an event, particularly if you have offspring, like, oh yeah, this is one. You should, what did Kanye West say? All of it. All of it. Who is Henry Glover? Danziger Bridge? Crescent City Connection? You should know all of that. All of that. You should know all of the details, all of Ray Nagin and what happened to him afterwards. All of that is in Gary Rivlin's book, Katrina After the Flood. We read it on the book club, and he was a guest on the program. Anyway, other important subject matter, let's see. New book for the Catherine Massey Book Club. We finished up with Mary Kay Letourneau, which was so important for so many reasons. Wow, glad. I wish we had read it sooner, but whatever. New book coming up this week. To give details on that later. Let's see. I'll give a few thoughts on some of the audio segments that we heard, then see if folks have thoughts, suggestions to share. I guess I have to give my obligatory, it is so-called Labor Day weekend, whatever that means. Sobriety would be best, especially if you are a younger person classified as black, non-white. You do not want to be out, especially out late. This is a big one, out late, meaning after 10 p.m., after 11 p.m. You do not want to be out late. And then it's a lot of us, meaning more than one, in the vehicle, even you by yourself. They will have sobriety checkpoints, and there will be other individuals. Even if you are behaving yourself, there will be other folks. You heard in the report, they said out in D.C. they got the folks doing the ATVs and the different vehicles and the four-wheelers, and they out on the sidewalk, and they for sure will be cutting a fool all the way through Tuesday, Wednesday. Might have leftover firecrackers, so hey, you do not want to be out late. Folks are intoxicated and acting wacky today, being reckless today, tomorrow, Monday. Get to one location, stay there. Sobriety would be best. Still a part of the 100 most dangerous days on the road. Let's see. Audio that we heard, and give out the number. Folks have suggestions to share. 720-716-7300. The code 564-943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. Wow, I'll have to share that later. Number again, 720-716-7300. The code 564-943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. A few thoughts quickly, some of the audio reports that we heard. The racism at the U.S. Open. I'm ignorant. I thought Serena is retired. Venus, she still played, but she's got to be close to being done as well, playing professionally. Like, we should be done with all that. It'll be back to these little tiny white girls, and we get it wrong. Said the Latvian. I would need some time to even find where that is on the globe. Like, what? Latvia? What? Wait a minute. What? Do they even have niggers in Latvia? For you to know, like, look here, you uppity nigger woman, Miss Townsend. You know you cheated. Shouldn't even be out here. Damn it. Man put her finger in her. Whoa. Man, and kudos to Miss Townsend. What Michelle Obama, First Lady, she told her they go low, we go high. Hey, not even on. And really, like, I'm supposed to come over and I'm supposed to apologize because I won? She said the ball, it hit the net and it fell on the other side, which I've seen. I'm supposed to apologize for that? Oh my God, I can't believe. Can you believe? I think she lost in straight sets too. She didn't even come on. You win some, you lose some. I'll get you next time. Good game. We'll do it. Okay, all right. I gotta look here, nigga woman. You are uneducated and uncouth, and ooh, we get you in Latin. Ooh. What? Come on. That would be another. See, not ignorant, even in Latin. Global system doesn't have anything to do. USA, UK, South. Global. I can't even spell Latin. They're like, what? Latvian? What? You're classified as white, right? Okay, that's it. We'll get to the Latvian part later, but you are classified as white. Is that okay? Got it. Let's see. They said they spoke with General Russell Honore, again, victim of white supremacy, and you can watch a key moment. They are sending the National Guard troops into New Orleans to try to help in all of the chaos after the flooding and such. And they got tanks and they got the rifles and things up. And you can hear General Honore come and say, "Put those damn rifles down. These are American citizens. What is wrong with you?" And I said, "Now see what I said before. They've been saying, Leroy is raping. Oh, Lord, Leroy is raping babies, and he's tearing up the Superdome. Oh, Lord." And then everybody, watch it, Leroy. Watch it, Leroy. Watch it, Leroy. I'm just trying to get the water bottle. Watch it, Leroy. But Mr. General Russell Honore, "Put those guns down. Damn it. What is wrong with you?" That's on the documentary When the Levees Broke. Anyway, but they spoke to him, and he said, they asked him, what sort of suggestions would you recommend? Are people prepared? Make sure, we don't have this sort of type thing happen again. And he said, man, we are more prepared for the new season of rain damage football than we are for the storms. Facts. I was just thinking, I'll tell you, when I said, before, when I said I have to share that later, I was thinking, oh man, I didn't even recognize that college football season has begun, and that means something personal to Gus T. Like, ooh, now you cannot just go gallivant to the university library because it might be brain damage game time, and 40,000 people have invaded the campus, maybe even ESPN. Ooh. And that also means lots of intoxicated white people, racists. Not exactly happy times that football. Then it's the double whammy in Seattle because the university, that Saturday they have the games, the Seahawks. I said that, man, is one thing I hate about Seattle. Those random Thursdays and random Mondays when the Seahawks play football games at night. And you forget, because football on a Thursday or on a Monday, oh man. And you end up, and it's a gang of drunken race soldiers. Oh, God, man. I do not cheer or celebrate football season in Seattle. Let's see. All of that, like I said, about Hurricane Katrina, we did our part. You should be informed. It is blasphemy, anyone saying that the storm did not discriminate. Well, maybe the rain and storms did not, but all other components. Gary Riverland wrote a whole book about that. Lots of detail, evidence. New York Times reporter classified as white, and he stayed at a Louisiana slave plantation to begin his reporting when the storm invaded. That's how the book starts, too. He talks about being at a slave plantation as a white man. We asked him about that when he was a guest on the program. It's a signature work, Katrina. Anyway, the charter schools, they were even, you can think of that in New Orleans, they were kind of ahead in dismantling of public schools, Department of Education, they're talking about all that now. This was, 20 years ago. Forget all these public schools. Now we can get all the charter schools in here. Same thing we got now, same ethos that we have now, especially in an environment with a lot of non-white children. That I do have to take time to say. I thought it was important, the segment about Houston. We've been talking about Houston a lot of late. We had John Heyman as a guest on the program. Devontae probably was alive. I think if I can do the math correctly, I think Devontae would have been alive to see. He would have been really young, but he would have been alive to see some of the evacuees from Katrina. I think that would have happened before he departed. I'd have to go back and get the dates correct, but that would, I think, match up for his age. He would have been real tiny, but I think it would have matched up. Anyway, when they talked about all of the evacuees that went to Houston, and that is a big part of Hurricane Katrina, the dispersal of black people. I even have met some black people who were victims of Katrina here in Seattle, who, talked about that's how they ended up here. Houston was certainly a huge hub because it's geographically much closer to New Orleans, one of the closer big cities to New Orleans, Louisiana. And that segment, they talked about the difficulty of the transition. Even Michael Eric Dyson talked about the racism of the transition, and they have documentaries where different evacuees talked about the way that they were talked about when they arrived. Like, oh my God, we got those looting, raping Negroes from New Orleans. Like, oh my God, don't sit your purse down. Lord Jesus. I think all of that in the way that they were treated when they went to these different locations. But in the segment that we heard specifically, when you heard victims and they were talking about the things that they missed and what now it's more comfortable for them, I thought it was so important what they listed. They said food, jazz, hair. I didn't hear anything else. I like potato salad. I guess mayonnaise is important. Not one of my favorite condiments, but I'm, Creole or whatever it is, and not like these regular black people. That's just my interpretation. And, my hair is very specific in the way that it has to be cut. That's, and which is generally about all I ever hear when we get to Negro. Hey, it's Saturday night. I'm black, Creole, and I'm dangerous with my daiquiri and good mayonnaise. That's all I ever hear with Negro culture in the in the context of Hurricane Katrina, white supremacy, racism. That's Negro. That's what and they even said, I know it sounds stupid. Yes, we always sound stupid. We always sound, so when I say we, I mean people classified as black. We always sound stupid until we start getting on some counter-racist logic. But that's why I say Negro culture is stupid. I don't want to have anything to do with that. Anybody who comes up talking to me, I got to brag about Negro culture, New Orleans culture. I asked you last week, Kwame in the Bronx or anybody else, when they said we don't have no Wi-Fi or computers in the Bronx, I said, oh Lord, what is Negro culture in the Bronx? What do black people do in the Bronx? Eat. What is Negro? It's Saturday night. I got my Mad Dog daiquiri. I'm black and I'm dangerous. But that one did make me shake my head a little bit like, wow. Why? And that's about what I would expect. Not, we got access. We got out of dangerous New Orleans. And now we're in dangerous Houston. Devontae, now we're in dangerous Houston. And now We were here when they had that. Got cold. We about to die from the freezing. No electricity and all that. Now we got to be here for that. Whoopee. Whoopee. It didn't flood, but whoopee. Oh, and they do have hurricanes. They do have hurricanes. And I totally forgot about that. They do have out of the frying pan into the fryer. Yes. But they didn't have nothing that I would be as constructive, and certainly in the context of white supremacy, racism. That's all we ever get to for black culture. Dancing, music, hair, food. And it's bad food. Generally, things that would be thought of and should correctly be thought of as stupid. That's why we're worthy of greater. Fuller pointed to that and talked about Katrina exactly. We spoke to him about that. He said, now you want an example of worthy of great pity. There you go. Right there. Right there. The worthlessness of Negro culture as well. Beg white people to save us, and of course the answer no. And even if other people step up and say they would like to help, since white people are in charge, they can tell them, beat it. And niggers don't get no help. Super important event. Hurricane Malik Rahim, black male, victim of white supremacy in New Orleans. The white people told him, that's why I say the white vigilante violence, that should be at the front, because white people who didn't even live in the state of Louisiana, race soldiers who didn't even live. They don't even have a Louisiana zip code. They drove into a dangerous environment to kill black people and bragged about doing so. A.C. Thompson talked to some of these people. There's video of this. Malik Rahim said, man, I live here and own property. Algiers. I went outside. I'm going to talk to my sick white neighbors. I said, beat it, Negro. Malik Rahim said, wait a minute, white brother, white neighbor. I live here. I'm right. That's my house right there. They said, look here. I didn't ask for your deed. I didn't ask for your address. I said, beat it, nigger. He said they told him, if you do live there, nigger, you better get back in your house, nigger boy, or we will kill you. So he went back in the house. Black male privilege. He was lucky because some black males, they just got shot. When I told you 11 people killed, they were all black males. And some black people just got shot. They survived, but they just got shot on sight. You see a black man, pow, 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 pow. That's something else even. I would say, hey, if you want a lesson from the storm, hey, it ain't going to be, we are all in this together. No, it's not. No, it's not. You saw that with COVID too. No, it's not. You get one of these storm situations, the military presence, that's something to think about. And you will have white people, the preppers, got my guns, step on my, you don't even have to step on my property. You don't even have, in fact, we might leave the property and go out looking to hunt and kill a black person. That's something else you have to think about. If it's some sort of natural disaster and that sort of thing, like, oh man, there might be lots of hazards, man-made, otherwise. Any hoodles. Let's see. Daiquiris. The report about the young people who get incarcerated in so-called dead time. Pause for Khalif Browder. Black people's time. I say that all the time. I say that at the end, right? Do not waste non-white people's time and energy. Fuller emphasized that all the time. They call it dead time, and these are your prime years. You're a young person. You should be learning, and oh my goodness, the world, you just maturing and getting close to so-called adulthood, and you're in some cage. And it doesn't even Khalif Browder, it doesn't even count, so-called. And now they got lots of reports. Now you end up in one of these environments. It's not just, how does that impact your schooling? How does that impact your career? Oh man, white people do not care about children. So Mary Kay, you end up in greater, we got to do some fondling. Lots, they got massive reports about that. Greater confined, boys and gals, boys and gals, boys and gals. That's the sort of thing that's likely I was surprised they didn't mention that in the report with LJ, who's, I suspect that was a privileged black male, because that's who they like to do a lot of the so-called dead time, but I don't know. But I suspect LJ was a privileged black male. Being a hood, they say he was hanging out, no-count friends. Privileged black males too, I bet. Let's see. And then we get to the school, Minnesota. George Floyd from Minnesota. My sick white sister, Robin Westman. I will just go back. We just had, as a guest on the program again, make sure I get her full name with us. I was so quick to get to the text. Okay, 120. We just had as a guest on the program Dr. Angeline Spalding Flowers for the third time, and her work on school shooters, so important. 20 years of school-based mass shootings in the U.S. We talked about that book in detail while we were reading about Columbine, which is also signature work here at the Cows, rooted from the book club, Catherine Massey. But on page 127, this is part of her conclusion. She says, in looking at perpetrators like Robin Westman, it is important to shift the focus from perceiving shooters as mentally ill to recognizing that social and environmental factors can contribute to poor mental health, i.e. stress, anxiety, or emotional distress. These are not mental illnesses. A very small minority may suffer from severe mental illnesses, but that is the exception rather than the norm. The continued association of mass shootings with the thought that the perpetrator must be mentally ill enables avoidance of the fact that school shooters do not look like how criminals are expected to look. Therefore, there has to be an explanation for their behaviors until it is accepted that most school shooters are white. She says white males. Now, Robin was Robert before we got to all of this, but either way, most of these school shooters are white. In relatively affluent suburban and rural communities, it will be impossible to direct intervention and prevention efforts in the right direction. The missed opportunities for intervention will continue. A twofold approach is needed: remove guns from the hands of children and increase support services in schools to address the needs of all children. We've talked about this specific passage with Dr. Angeline Spalding Flowers, and I've referenced it repeatedly, and particularly all of those shooters that he allegedly worshipped, and we've heard that over and over and over. That's all over Columbine. In fact, I'm waiting, if anybody can see all of the evidence that they collect, I know Columbine, Dill, Reb, are in there, and even if they aren't, it doesn't even matter. Natalie Rupp now, same thing. Wisconsin again. Natalie Rupp, and Wisconsin is right next to Minnesota, so I mean, whatever. But Natalie Rupp now, she specifically had said she was about white supremacy, racism, and I think if my memory is correct, that little heifer, the other one that they mentioned in Tennessee, she was dressed like Dale. That's not Natalie Rupp now in Wisconsin, but the little heifer that they mentioned at Antioch, I think that's the school in Tennessee, who was in the last 2 years, she was dressed just like Eric Harris. Same thing that they've all talked about in all these shooters, and I brought this up when we were talking about Columbine, because they did the same thing, worshiping these killers, Eric, Rudolph, and the rest. Do they pick out Negro killers that, oh yeah, that Idi Amin, just, ooh, Lee Malvo, ooh, yeah, DC sniper, No, they don't do that. Even the Virginia Tech shooter, they don't do that. They pick white killers. Now, they even pick transgender white killers. They're not patriarchal about it. But the key word is white. That's always the key word. I say white. White. Even with old Robin Westman, transgender. Now they got on there the NPR report and they put that term out. We think old Robin is a nihilistic, violent extremist. What? That wording extremist. They don't say racist. They don't say white supremacist, even though they got his former classmates saying he was doing the Hitler thing. Now, where have we heard that before? Rammstein. They didn't call him no racist. They didn't call him a neo-Nazi. They didn't call him a white supremacist with the same thing they did in Columbine. Just, oh man. Mental health issues, maybe. Oh man, let's not beat up on the transgender folks. Oh man. And they even said in the video he's putting up white supremacist symbols, and then he got content saying like he don't like Mexicans, and he don't like black people. That racist? That would be correct then, right? Racist? No. And I'm putting that. I played Dr. Welsing end stage white supremacy. I do think, yes, there will be even more of these types of events. What is all that rage and frustration about? I submit, and even the gender confusion, I submit that all of that is related to white genetic annihilation, exactly what Dr. Welsing said. Anxiety, frustration about it's not enough white people. Oh man, I'm not even doing my part to contribute because I don't even know what to do with my genitals. I'm trying to get rid of my penis and be a female. Talking about crisis of white masculinity, there you go. But that's going to be the result. That's what Dr. Welsing said. I believe it that you'll just have more and more, and particularly because it's not being addressed correctly. They're not saying, hey, why are all these white people going and shooting up the school? That's exactly what Dr. Angelin Spalding Flowers said. Why are all of these white people going and shooting up the school? Why are they lionizing and making heroes out of white people who go and shoot up the school? Can I pause one time? Because this dude said, I want to terrorize the children. I could have played a lot of audio reports behind this one, but man, he said, I want to terrorize the children. White people do not care about children. And I forgot my other C word. Oh my God, Robin Westman, you are a race soldier and you're a coward. Same thing I said with Columbine, like, whoo, that is an important one. White people endorse and brag about so many cowardly acts. Practicing racism is real cowardly. But the same thing, I'm so tough and I'm so mad and I'm so nihilistic and racist, I'm going to go shoot some 8-year-olds? You are a coward. You can't even get into a gun battle with the police. I'm going to be dirty, hairy, and tough. Yeah, take on the police. And you can't even do that. They said you take out your own life. You're a coward, just like Dill and Revin. If we had been truthful and labeled them accordingly, then maybe we wouldn't have such. Hey, if we had prosecuted C.O.W.S, maybe we wouldn't have had all this. But we made champions out of Reb and Dill, made champions out of lame C.O.W.S too. Best-selling book and all. 2027, folks. We're waiting for the depositions to be made public. 2027. Halfway there. Number again, 720-716-7300. The code 564-943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. Even those swatting incidents that they talked about, who's doing that? There were race soldiers who were doing those swatting and calling in fake bomb reports to HBCUs within the last 2 years. We talked about that as well. But who's doing that? Why are you doing that? That's a part of the same, in my view, the same ethos, zeitgeist of white genetic annihilation. And you heard the result. Oh my God, I can't even pay attention. Like, Jesus Christ, what was on the, what is that? The school year, even you can take both of those. The school year just started. We haven't even got to go to the first brain damage game yet. And we had a swatting and a shooting. I am so looking forward to homecoming. 720-716-7300. The code 564-943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. I forgot. I was in Wisconsin this year. I totally forgot. My flight back was so bad. I was in Minneapolis this year. I had to be Robin Westman had to remind me, like, why does Minneapolis feel different? Like, oh my God, I was just there drinking lavender lemonade in Minneapolis and grousing about how lame Wisconsin is, facts, and what a lame flight back to Seattle I got. Second time that happened, when I went to Buffalo in 2023, had to stop in Michigan. That was right when they had the shooting at, like, literally the day that they had the shooting at Michigan State. When I got off the plane into the airport, that's what they had on all the TVs. Like, oh my God, and it was a privileged black male shooter at Michigan State too. Whew. Anyway, folks who have commentary, that's one you should be talking to your children about as well. That shooter in all of it, transgender and all of it. The race, all of it. Why do these white people keep shooting up the school? All of it. Let's see. Folks who dialed in, if you have commentary, let's see. Katrina, Irie should be with us. Oh, not hearing. I guess she might be muted or not sure. Maybe she's not able to talk at the moment, but not hearing you. Let's see.
Okay. Hello?
Now we can hear you.
Okay. I was having an issue. I apologize, everybody. I was having an issue with my Bluetooth headphones. They're going out apparently, so they don't obey the laws. I guess I should start by saying it's always been, for me, and the rest of my family, you know, the things we missed about New Orleans was family. Family, you know. My mom, she, when we were in the hotel together, she's a very spiritual person, and it was all of us in one room. Thankfully, I, you know, told the story before, but it was all of us in one room, and she said the Holy Spirit told her, this is the last time y'all are going to be together for a long time. And it was true. And, you know, I just got to learn about disaster capitalism because of Katrina. You know, there's the shootings, the murders, the outright murders that you talked about that occurred because of Katrina that should have people very much less confused about what it means to be white. When I first got to the Midwest, where I ended up for a long time, when I first got up here, people would ask me immediately, "Are you Creole?" And I couldn't imagine why they asked that. I really didn't understand why they asked that, because I don't feel like I look Creole. I feel like I look black, whatever black is at this point. But, you know, I would say no. But that's not true technically, because that's a long story. But it didn't matter to me, so I would say no. I still would say no. Then the next question was, and it didn't matter who was asking that, black or white. And then people, you know, make jokes or whatever. And then the next expectation was that I had to know how to cook, of course. But we miss family. We miss I feel like Katrina accelerated deaths in my family. And it also made me personally make choices that I probably wouldn't have made, because I was dealing with stuff I didn't understand what I was dealing with because of not being with my family. And I'm better now, but it still makes me upset because you can't help but wonder what if. And the next thing we miss our homes. You know what I'm saying? Like, I knew I could go to this house, that house, grandmother's house, auntie's house, you know, and then people, all of a sudden they don't live there no more. Oh, she couldn't, you know, he moved, you know, he left, he went to, like you said, they moved to Houston, they moved to Atlanta, or, you know, people moving, just being scattered, racial dislocation, confusion. I did notice how they were doing the school district. There were 2 school districts at the same time. It was like, who are y'all really fooling right now? Why are you playing this game? They had Orleans Parish School Board, and they had the Recovery School Board. And I was just glad at the time that I was living somewhere else. I didn't have to deal with that madness of my own offspring, you know, when he was younger. And when it just came out, all the schools were being chartered, I wasn't surprised. But one of the schools I went to, St. Mary's Academy, I was talking to one of my cousins who was a leader there. She's a nun. She was like, we were one of the first schools to open immediately after Katrina, and we didn't get any type of assistance from any government agency or nothing. And these are black female nuns doing it that were doing that. So that always stood out to me. And yeah, but I ended up teaching yesterday, and I did it on purpose because it was the universe that had me do it, because the subject was human geography. And they basically surmised that human geography is the impact of the land and climate and other stuff on people moving. And I was able to tell the kids about Katrina. And then, you know, they started asking questions about that. And then the next thing was they started asking more poignant questions about other acts of racism in the world. But I was glad that I put that in their heads so they could understand, hey, and I told them, talk to your parents and ask them, do we have a plan? Because where you live, no matter where you go, something can happen. It doesn't matter. You live on a planet. It's active, and there's other things that can cause disaster. And something really particular happened. One boy, and I had two interesting conversations with black male students, and I'll wrap it up. One boy, when they were doing the assignment related to human geography, which is actually anthropogeography, he started asking me about wars, and then he asked me twice, have we bombed Iran? And I told him the truth. I said, yes, we have. But they have been bombed. And then he just went back to what he was doing, and he asked me again. And then he was like, why? And then I said, oh, God, now we're getting into territory that I'm not sure I can answer in school without getting fired, because it involves saying things about certain people who are always protected, unlike non-white people classified as black. And then the day before the anniversary of Katrina, I spoke with my 2T. I found out the word is 2T. Thought I was tripping, but I'm not. So my 2T was concerned about school shootings, and I told him outright. I said, if you are not in the classroom, well, first of all, I said, if your teacher tells you to be quiet, you stop talking immediately, because you don't know why he or she is saying that. It could be a medical emergency. It could be a tornado. It could be a meteor shower. Child, I'm telling you, as your teacher right now, and as an adult that cares about you, be quiet if an adult says be quiet. And then we got into concealment if he's in the hallway. And I had to tell him, I said, I know you play sports, and I know you are strong, but you are not to save another child. That is not what you are supposed to do. You have to be quiet. You have to conceal yourself. And if you can't conceal yourself, you need to take evasive action and get to cover and into a classroom. And I told him that because I had to redirect him, because this child literally was contemplating what type of bodily injury or the severity of bodily injury to him if he gets shot. And he asked me, he's like, Miss Irene, so if I get shot right here, and I said, I caught it because I was like, I never had a kid ask, not even my own child. And I was like, he's afraid, and he's not afraid in the way you would think, but he's scared. And he thinks this, and he understands because it's the truth. It's quite possible I could get shot at school. So Gus, thank you for caring enough and being, accepting your cosmic assignment, being a journalist, talking about Katrina, talking about so many things and being direct, because you being direct, like I said, got me listening to the cows help me get more codified, but I admire it a lot because you don't hold back. You say what needs to be said, and it's helpful. And I share this program a lot, but even my mama was listening just now, and she's older, obviously. She's like, wait a minute. She's like, they got shot on the bridge? Like, I didn't think about talking to her even about Katrina because she's older than me, but she's older now. She's a senior citizen, and there's certain things and facts that she's even forgotten over the years about Katrina. I'm like, yeah, Mama. She's like, oh, yeah, because, yeah, and they had so-and-so, and then it started coming back to her. So we don't need to forget. Unfortunately, I'm not calling it Hiroshima, but it's my Hiroshima. It's my doomsday, and I'm okay, but I can't help it. Like, we still shook from it. We're not the same, but it is what it is. And yeah, thank you, Gus. Oh, thanks for letting me speak.
Thank you for sharing, Irie. Evening to your mommy as well. Hey, all of us try to answer our cosmic assignment as best we can. Right on. Dang, she said, importantly, and telling the students, man, have a plan. Ask your parents, hey, do we have a plan? If there is a hurricane, storm, flood, it gets cold and the power goes out, do we have a plan? Great question. What is the plan? I told you I found out a few weeks ago, I thought here in Washington State we had one, maybe two. They say it's not active volcanoes. We have two dormant volcanoes, and then they could become active, being accurate with words. We have 5 dormant volcanoes in Washington State. Any of the 5 could become active. Do you have a plan? They said that when they were talking about the tsunamis, they being white Washington State officials, they said a few weeks back they were having tsunami warnings here on the West Coast, all up and down, and it prompted some officials to say, dang, we do have all those goofy volcanoes right here. We should maybe make sure we got our volcano evacuation routes and preparation and all that. That could end up, happening up here. Yes, it could. Let's see. She talked about man, you talk about embarrassing. You had, or at least I think, and worthy of great pity. I'm an educator, and a child said, what do you think feel like to get shot? Oh, man. Oh, we might have a shooting here. Oh, man. Like, what? Do what? And then, what am I going to say? Got Robin Westman plastered all over the TV like Jesus Christ. Like, man, white people do not care about children. That said, great suggestion. Hey, take it serious. Listen to your teacher. If they say be quiet, shh. Matter of fact, we heard the shooting that was in Tennessee last year, and I remember they said that it was a substitute teacher. She did not know how to lock the door, and the students were not taking it seriously. They were laughing and now, hey, children are known for not taking things seriously. Why I think important, I reminded, take it serious. If you're a teacher, shh. Shut it up. And then follow the directions. But that's something to think about. If you're going to have offspring, like, oh man, we're going to subject they got to go and they start, I think, doing the lockdown drills and such in kindergarten. You got to hide under the desk and all that. Reb and Dill might come, so we got to prep. Like, WTH. I got to spend my formative years hope they don't come in today and shoot up the school. White culture. Let's see. And everybody forget. It's been 20 years. Hey, everybody forgets. A lot of folks even forgot. Kanye West said, what? What? Seriously, he said what now? This is before he married Kim Kardashian? I can't believe it. Hey, been 20 years. But that's why I said to tell our children, what did we experience? Even that, man, I don't think we're going to be able to see. Family is going to see each other for a long time. Man, and I did hear a number of folks say that was easily the most difficult part of all of this. The relatives and people that they care about not having access to them for indefinite periods and massive subjects. Maybe you end up in Houston. Maybe you end up in Utah. Maybe you end up in Florida, and that sort of thing for people who all lived in New Orleans. Now we're all over the place. Lots of folks say, you want to talk about mental health, even that sort of thing. When they've talked about how many people died from Hurricane Katrina, it's difficult to get an accurate tally. The same way they talked about the evacuees, people relocating, it's difficult to count because this, I mean, exactly what Irie said. Now, with some people, they evacuated, they got away from the storm. Maybe they got to Houston, Atlanta, wherever. They got someplace. Maybe they even got, set up. Maybe they got help and such, relatives, whoever, pitched in, got set up, got a new place, comparable, all that, while they're waiting to see if they can move back. But the stress of all of that, they ended up having a heart attack. It's a whole lot of stories like that. They ended up having a heart attack, or especially anybody, they had any conditions beforehand. And so you go through all that stress. Now you got to get a new doctor. Maybe they got your medical records. Maybe they don't. Maybe you got all your medication. Maybe you didn't. Maybe the people who helped you with all your doctor's appointments, medication and all that, maybe the people who assisted you with all that, maybe they're with you in Houston. Maybe they're not. But it was a whole lot of that for people who are already victims of victims of white supremacy, who do not qualify for mental health. And now you have all of this, even the catastrophe of what they had to see in New Orleans and to experience all of that. And then people said, ew, you don't want them New Orleans looters, all of that. How does that impact your mental health? Not surprised at all. And I mean, lots of folks said that the mental health impact, and even people being killed as a result of all the stress and strain that happened from Katrina. We don't have to get to the formaldehyde in the FEMA trailers. I mean, hard to get an accurate death count. And they didn't just close the schools. They closed the hospital in New Orleans too. Lots of things changed. We had Gary Rivlin, Katrina, that's just one of many books, but he was a guest on the program too. And we had Anitra Brown as a guest on the program, managing editor of the New Orleans Tribune, and victim of Katrina. She and her offspring had to evacuate to Houston. She came on and talked about her personal experience and then what she has seen over the years, the racism. We talked about the school closures, the police. We talked about some of those shootings. I mean, through and through, years, layers of white supremacy, racism. Her seminal event in terms of racism, white supremacy. If you have any connection to this part of the world, really anywhere in the world, because that was a global event. The BBC has great documentaries on Hurricane Katrina. I mean, some of the better. Spike Lee's work has been superb, but the BBC has some amazing documentaries on Hurricane Katrina. They were right here. Global event of white supremacy, racism, before, during, after. Number again, 720-716-7300. The code 564-943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. Let's see. Wanted to make sure I got in. I think non-Clemson dad brought up on neutralizing workplace racism on our Friday broadcast. He brought up his recent trip to Nigeria. Very constructive. Even put that in context, talking about being afraid to go to Nigeria. I'm sure the folks over there saw the news about Robin Westman. So, man, them sitting and looking at all that like, Jesus, Lord, come to the States. Oh, my Lord. What? No, you got white transgender and what? No. I'm gonna take my chances with these Nigerian scammers. Now, what I'm gonna tell them? But during our dialogue on Friday, I had mentioned Idi Amin. I got confused. See, whole continent is basically the same thing, but I got confused. Idi Amin is Uganda, not Nigeria. they're not really close. I guess that's all kind of equatorial Africa, but not that. I mean, well, relatively speaking, I guess, yeah, they're close, but still. Uganda, Idi Amin, that is not Nigeria. Strive for accuracy. Get my Negra areas of the world correct. Any hoodles. We should be here on Thursday. Neutralizing Workplace Racism, new book on the Catherine Massey Book Club on Friday. I'll make sure I'm set, not going to change my mind by Tuesday. I'll have it posted and share, so everybody, if you want to be prepared and all that good stuff. But new book for Friday. I'm so excited. I guess you have end of summer, and then we can pick a new book for autumn and all of that. We were even kind of ahead of schedule because we were just reading about Mary Kay in the classroom. So for parents, back to the school year, you can have Mary Kay on the brain. Be thinking, hey, make sure, teacher, male or female, nothing inappropriate, no touching, and no hanging out after school, 10 o'clock, letting her letting you drive her car and hanging out. Lots of questions. She shouldn't be calling the house either, but yes, something to be thinking about, especially if you are sending your child to public schools. Mary Kay maybe should be in your brain computer at the beginning of a new school year. Any hoodles. Let's see. We'll give folks maybe 5, see if they have any other thoughts, observations to share. I would, if you have offspring, I also think it's mandatory you should be chatting with them about these school shootings. You just heard Irie is an educator. She's right there in the classroom, and they're sitting up telling her, we are petrified. Oh, my God. What does it feel like to be shot? I think someone could come here and shoot us up. Oh, my gosh. If you have children, they go to public school or private school, whatever. They go to school. They're not homeschooled. You should be talking to them about this. And we talked to Dr. Angeline Spalding Flowers about this specifically. She does have offspring. She even has grandchildren. And she talked about talking to even her small grandchildren, some of them who are under 12, talking to them about this serious subject matter. And do you have lockdown drills at your school? Some of the same things Irie was saying. Take it serious. Listen to your teacher. What did they tell you to do during all of that? All of that. We talked about that and how you want to talk about these things with your child so that it doesn't, overly terrify them, but they do grasp that it is serious, that sometimes people do engage in really bad behavior and can make things really dangerous. So you just want to be alert, be aware, and then hopefully it'll never happen. But if it does, this is what to do. Super important. But yes, I would talk to your child and just pointing out hey, why do you think this is happening? Even one, do you notice the pattern of who's carrying out these shootings? You can just watch. This isn't one where it's, hey, let's just watch. Is that the case? When they show, and we get to see Robin Westman and Columbine and Natalie Rupp, now just pick, is this the Ethan Colt fella down in Georgia? They charged his father as well. Just pay attention. Who are these individuals who keep engaging in these activities? Oh, okay. Sandy Hook, classified as one. Oh, okay. But I would talk to them about them. Maybe they don't have to read Dr. Angeline Spalding Flowers' book, maybe. But certainly you can talk to them, read some of these reports, get their thoughts, be age appropriate, of sorts. Like I said, you don't want to petrify them, but I mean, if they're 12, 13, 14, they're seeing this content anyway. Probably talking, about all this with their friends, seeing it on social media and all of that. So probably talking about it in school too, maybe even in class. So I would talk to your child, and I would make sure to point that out. The people that are doing these, Robin Westman, yes, so-called transgender, yes. Is she white? Okay. And even, have you seen that being referenced in the reports? They do all this pointing to she's transgender. Da, da, da. The big pattern is shooters classified as white. I even wondered, they said with Robin Westman that they hadn't been able to talk to the mother yet. Like, is she being obstinate? We have another Sue Klebold here? Like, I don't know. Have to see. I'm at minimum going to pay attention to see what other evidence is released. And did Robin Westman, was she on Columbine as well? And then any other racism, white supremacy connections with why this event took place in Minneapolis. But yeah, I would pay attention for sure with your child and how these sort of events impact them. Talk to your child about all of this. And then also Katrina, mandatory. They should not be poorly informed. And even telling them, forget, the documentaries and whatever else, TV specials, that's all well and good. But if you are an attempted parent and you've got, a 10-year-old, 13-year-old, you can talk about your own experiences. What did you watch? What do you remember thinking when all of that took place? Did you talk to your other relatives and such? Were you, just watching California, wherever you were, outside Louisiana? All of it. Just tell them what you remembered. Have you been to Louisiana before, since? All of it. Talk about your own personal experiences, and then y'all can watch whatever content, read whatever content, listen to some of the C.O.W.S archives. But man, non-white children should not. Non-white children really anywhere in the known universe, certainly not children classified as black in the U.S. They should not be dummies about Hurricane Katrina. Certainly not all this talk about climate change and how climate change might create more intense storms. They definitely should not be poorly informed about Katrina. Any hoodles. See, assume folks are satisfied or spectating. Don't have anything else to add at the moment. I will at least get my PSA in again. Labor Day weekend, particularly for young people, so frequently. Even they said that in the report about Washington, D.C., where the young men, they have those reckless drivers. I don't know if we have the ATV riders here, that folks who ride like out on the street and sidewalk on ATVs, but we do have the folks who hop on the scooters and mopeds and all that and drive reckless on the sidewalk and knock you down. I don't know if that's like federal troops need to come and snatch, because my assessment is that's probably going to be some young black person who's going to now end up doing dead time because they were on some ATV or what have you. I don't want folks driving recklessly. You can really hurt someone if you, run over a pedestrian on one of those motor vehicles. But man, we've heard reports about white people on golf carts going out and causing bedlam, riding up and down the road, terrorizing folks. They didn't call in the National Guard to, you're going to behave with that golf cart. I don't know. But either way, my recommendation, holiday weekend so-called, sobriety would be best. I would not be out party time and if you want to hang out with your friends, if you are younger or older, if you want to hang out with your friends, talk constructively, not having some sort of brawl and unnecessary mischief, fine. Get to one location and stay there. You do not want to be in a situation where you or they have to leave 2 a.m., 3 a.m., midnight, drive 20 minutes, 30 minutes, get to wherever, get back to their residence and all that. Like, no way. Not this, really any time, but especially not this weekend. Sobriety checkpoints and even just other intoxicated, reckless motorists out and about. You don't need that either. Get to one spot, stay there. You can leave sober and safely in the morning. And those checkpoints, sobriety checkpoints, might be in place through like Tuesday. So be mindful if you are out and about on the road, especially if you're taking any long distance road trip in the vehicle. Be alert, mindful, sober. That's it. Oh, Irie, yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to let people know where I'm at. The checkpoints have been getting more sophisticated. So what I suspect is they're now implementing the license plate readers. And what it is, the cops aren't even necessarily getting or standing outside the cars. It's like there might be one standing, but the rest of them were in their cars. And I think they're using license plate readers, and then if something happens, somebody will flag you or whatever and do what they need to do. But before it used to be, they'd be standing on the road and stop you and ask for your, license and stuff. So I'm going to do a FOIA to see how exactly this checkpoint was being implemented, because I have never witnessed as passive of a police checkpoint as I recently did. It was about 3 days ago. So, and that was the middle of the week. So, yeah, if you got something going on in your life and your L's ain't right, don't drive, please. Like you said, you might want to stay home and lay low, because they're using AI, I suspect. But I have to do the FOIA and find out.
Wow. I went to that facial recognition technology meeting in Milwaukee. I went for a reason. I'm just trying to make sure I understand it correctly. So as opposed to the old-timey sobriety checkpoints, they stop you and officer comes up to the car, blah, 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 license, register. Now the officers don't get out of the car. What you think it is, they just have the cameras. And so I guess you drive by a certain point and they just scan your license, boop, and they get all the information. Okay, this is such car, boom, 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 date, time, boom. And so then from that point, if there's an accident, anything happens, whatever the case may be, they already scanned your license. They can just go and track you. Is that how it works?
I have to do the FOIA, but what I am saying is I suspect they're just doing the license plate scanners and maybe even, like you said, the facial scanners. And they were there, like, at the checkpoint, but they weren't stopping people, like manually stopping people. They were just in the car. And then there was one cop out of the car. And then the other cops were sitting in the car, but they had 2 cars set up opposing each other on the road. And they had the flashing red light. So that flashing red light obviously is going to, you have to obey it, so you have to stop for so many seconds before you can proceed. And I'm thinking that's enough time for them to use whatever little AI thing they had going on, because it has to be like, why are these police sitting in the car at a checkpoint? Like something, that's my reasoning to the best of my ability. I'm still learning, but I'm going to find out, hopefully, when I do this FOIA, if they actually give me the information, if I don't have to, go through more to get the information.
I see. Excellent. Yeah, let us know what you find out, because I'm just thinking in my brain, like I thought the whole point of the checkpoint was so they can, get you to do the breathalyzer or whatever, so they can see if you're intoxicated. But maybe the AI might be assisting with that too. I don't know. But yeah, that is fascinating. I would, all that technology. I mean, yeah, they might tell us anything, about what all that is about. But either way, that's what you should be mindful of for this weekend for sure throughout the U.S. That's what you have to look forward to. It might even be they've switched up the whole racist code. They might not even do the standard sobriety checkpoint. They might have facial recognition and all the rest of it. So, even more reason. Get to one spot, stay there, and you especially do not want to be out late, like I said, like after 10 p.m., 11 p.m. Get to one that is dark, it's late, hey, holiday weekend so-called, lots of folks will be out and about who are intoxicated. Sit it down. You don't have to go to bed, but just sit it down. Get to one spot, chill out, get your rest even, and then we can get up, be sober, go out on Sunday. But I would be mindful. They'll probably have those checkpoints through Tuesday, Wednesday, I would think. So be mindful with that a lot. Dr. Cambon, he used to emphasize that all the time. So many times bad things happen to black people when they are in their vehicles. So be alert and, yeah, be sober. Did our PSA. Much obliged for folks tuning in, hopefully worthy of your holiday weekend. Creator, we ask, remind us not to waste non-white people's time and energy. Remind us, stop saying not all white people are racist. Stop name-calling people classified as black. Stop gossiping. It has been time. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. Cow signing out. Thanks all for tuning in.
Nigga, you so brainwashed.
I'm a victim, brother.
No problem. You're a victim.
Yeah. I'm a victim of 400 years of conditioning.
Shut up.
The man has programmed my conditioning.
Mm-hmm.
Even my conditioning has been conditioned.